Pasha Power, Y7, Trish McCabe, welcome back.
Hi. Hi, happy to be here.
Always the perfect day. And thank you for tuning the replay and coming on this journey with us. So, Trish, when we were speaking last on your podcast, School of the Hard Knocks, Conversations from School of the Hard Knocks, we were covering people who had a great impact, who left a great impact and on the world and what they actually had in common. So, we peeled away the onion layers and we dug into the core and we found curiosity. Ironically, our curiosity found curiosity at the core of the cure. You know what I'm saying? So we went over some great people like Einstein, Steinfeld, Dr. Seuss, Stephen King, and more. And in the B-roll, right, the aftermath, we were talking, and from curiosity, we found possession.
Yes, I'm really intrigued.
So, and during that conversation, you actually brought up how possession was 9/10 or is 9/10 of the law. And I want you to elaborate on that.
Well, to me, it's a legal term that I've heard, and I did I looked it up, and it's saying that once you have possession of something, it's very hard to get it back. Basically, I guess that's what I got from when I looked it up, the legal term that expresses that truth. And I wanted to know what you thought of that law and how it pertains to possession as a whole, that kind of thing. This possession thing, really, I'm kind of intrigued and I'm curious for learning on this podcast why it's relative to what we're talking about, how and why it's relative.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but that came to me. I actually saw somebody say it. I'm like, wow, there's been a lot of synchronicities since we've been having our podcast. And we talked about that, like we'll see these various slogans and statements pertaining to these words, skewing them in a certain light, so to speak. And that's interesting to me.
Remember we was talking about how when you're focused on your destination, it actually makes the path to get there reveal itself when you're in tune with the vibration, right?
Right.
So that's why I think stuff like that happens to you, me, and others like us, is because we're in tune with the path and the signs. It's just like a sign on the highway. You're driving on the highway and you see a sign that says, your exit 10 miles. And you can start to say, oh shit, that's my exit. You may not know what to expect when you get off. Might be your first time, but you know the exit, right? So to take a look at the word possess, it actually means, the etymology is to have, hold, or own, which I really want to remember and pay attention to the word own, and we'll get to that a little later. Because the way it ties back into what we were talking about is the question basically was, what do they all have in common, right? And as we just went over, the word possess is a verb which means to have, hold, or own. Okay. So basically we were talking about something that they had or were holding on to inside of them that kept either distractions off of their back so they can continue and be focused, or they had something else. Now, we didn't know we were asking this so bluntly in the beginning, but I think working through it, this is what we came up with. And that's how we went back and said, oh, you know what we were talking about possession, which has ulterior motives and meanings too, which we're going to get into. So excited about today's show. So thank you for joining me once again. So to have, to hold, or to own. Okay. And then I like how you brought up 9/10 of the law, because the word law actually means measure, stroke, something laid down, right? Which actually publicly displays my exact reason for why I don't do why I don't do titles? They're so impossible. You know, I just surrendered to use of them because whose measure? Like, who are you got to measure up to? Whose measure? Is it yours? Is it someone else's? Is it ever going to be the same between two different people? We got into that when we was talking about love and stuff in one of the earlier podcasts. So tell me how you see possession as in titles, relationships, and this goes into internal as so your relationship with yourself, like we saw with the mirror last week, and even external relationships. So how does this term now, like I like how you use the 9/10 of the law, possession is 9/10 of the law. How does that tie into the flow of energy and in and around you, you think?
Well, okay, so I think it has something to do with the contracts and verbalization of things. Like what immediately came to my mind was Valentine's Day and be mine.
Be mine.
Be mine. Getting married, the contract of getting married. And that once people do that, they think they own one another. You belong to me. You belong to me. And I think of this song that I always thought was a powerful song, and you may have never heard of it, but it's Barbra Streisand's song. It's released, I want to say, the late 70s, early 80s. And the whole premise of the song was, my heart belongs to me first, you know? And the misnomer or the idea that it belonged to somebody else has done a great deal of harm. So I don't know if that answers your question, but for some reason that came to me. And it's funny because I was watching a sitcom and it was Cheers, and the woman, the main I forget her name, the short one with the curly hair, she's really funny, and she was like, oh, Valentine's Day is just a bunch of bullshit. Where, you know what I mean, you're pressured into buying things for each other. It's so disingenuous, fake and phony, and it was cool. And I was like, oh, she's like, be mine. What is that? Be mine. You know, she's like really saying the truth.
Yeah.
And I loved that. I loved that the writers put that in there. It's really important because it's true. I mean, somewhere along the line, whoever came up with this, they said, oh, let's make a holiday about love, and we'll get people to spend money that they don't have on things that they don't need, and to give them a false sense of security.
Right.
And in their relationships.
And security and satisfaction.
Yeah, security in what they think is satisfaction, but actually isn't, the illusion of satisfaction. But it's not really true, like even birthdays. I have an agreement with a friend of mine where if we miss each other's birthday, we don't get hurt, because that doesn't, just saying happy birthday that one time, I mean, you should be saying happy birthday every day, so just again, the titles that put these things into certain that allow behaviors, the titles that create and allow behaviors that are just unhealthy. Like, when you say be mine and you have that whole mentality, it enforces this idea of ownership, possession of that other person. Be mine. When that could never be. It's inaccurate. It's a misnomer. It just, and it also has greatly helped to perpetuate dysfunction in relationships, attachment, neediness, insecurity, needing somebody else to make you happy. Mm-hmm. Just all these things, just in that codependency, just in that holiday or celebrating love. It's just inaccurate. and it's helped this idea of ownership. Be mine. Be mine. It's like, but I can never be yours. I have to be me. I have to be my own. And anyways, back to that Barbra Streisand song. She says, my heart belongs to me. I'm sorry that I'm hurting you, but I have to and there's a great movie, Sex and the City, and in one of the lines she says in the movie Sex and the City, the first one, she says, I'm just going to say what you're not allowed to say. I love you, but I love me more. And I've been in a relationship with myself my entire life, and that's the one I have to honor first.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
lots of stuff to put on the table, but these are, I've been thinking about this word possession since you brought it to my attention in our last podcast. These are some of the things that have been coming to my mind, and also synchronicities that keep popping up, like possession is 9/10 of a law. I saw that, I'm like, oh, I gotta share that with Pasha. What if Beauty has to say?
Yeah. And you tie it all together so well, because own as an adjective actually like that's why I held the word earlier from the definition of possess to have the whole own. Own, there's two versions of it. It's the adjective version, which is, like you said, of or belonging to oneself or itself, which is exactly what you're talking about in Streisand and Sex and the City.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So nobody else, when we're going back to those people that we were looking at in the podcast we did last with you, nobody else shared the same curiosity. You know, whether it was, hey, I want to make Apple for it to be Apple, or I want to make computers that do something and then it became Apple, or I want to get super wealthy off of whatever's the new technology now, and then that wound up being Apple, or I was just wanting to help people, you know. So there's an infinite amount of ways you could become possessed, right? Or take ownership of to create that result. So of or belonging to oneself and itself, and we found curiosity was what they had. So no one else shared that same curiosity, right? To the point where they were driven to do it. Now, own also is a verb, or it can be used as a verb, which actually ironically means possess, right? So there's a loop there, right? So,
Right.
and that's important to know, right? Because the Middle English verb dropped from use about 1300, and it was restored indirectly. They said, I took some notes here from my etymology dictionary, and it was restored indirectly through a back formation derivative of owner, when the verb owe in its original sense possess was becoming obsolete. So there's a direct connection with the word possess and to own or ownership, right?
Yeah.
And that ties into what you were saying.
And I through the years, you hear people say he possesses this really redeeming quality. Just as an example, the wording of possesses this unique ability to do something. That's very interesting. That just came to my mind, that wording that I've heard. He possesses this whatever it is. They're using that word to describe something that somebody has about them, a quality that it has about them, or a strength, or even a weakness, but usually from a strength standpoint. But yeah, that's interesting. I think it's important to look at how we use that word and what it's suggesting when you're using it, how you're using it, the suggestion that it's making, the power of suggestion.
Yeah.
In these type of words anyways. But so yeah, I think I love that you're doing this, because I just don't think people really understand that there's a lot of power in words and how you use them. They're like spells. It's a part of the manifestation, how you language things. I catch myself all the time. I just say, no, don't say that. I even say to my friends, don't say that. You'll create that. Don't say that. Think of a different way.
What's
Yeah.
another way to describe that, what you're doing, what you're talking about there? When you said, don't ask for that because you'll manifest it. What's another term that's common, very common among a few different groups of people?
A word that's common that's like the word possession?
No, just the act of what you were saying about don't say that, you'll make it manifest.
this, the spell thing.
Yeah.
You are
Okay.
actually, it's like a spell. I mean, that's what spelling,
Okay.
it's,
Spell.
you're spelling out what you want or don't want. You're spelling out your focus, your languaging, your focus. So the word focus comes to my mind, what you're focusing on.
All true.
Don't
All
focus
true.
on that. Don't language that part of it. Yes, that could happen. Again, we go back to what you said, but the other thing could happen. You got to be clear. I think when you're putting a wish out or you're wanting to manifest something, it's important to be really concise and very clear about what it is you're after.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you don't, you get confusion. If you don't have clarity in what you want, you're going to get more confusion until you get clear and specific in your language and your thought process and your focus. So I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it definitely did. It definitely did. If I was to summarize, I could say I like how you said spells, right? Because we talked about that. We mentioned that here and on this channel. It's no secret. Craft spells, so spelling class spells. So yeah, you're absolutely conducting like magic every time you speak. There's magic and power in words. Excuse me, affirmations. Another way to describe it in another common way that people don't think about it because they want to measure it differently, right? Is pray. You know what I
Oh, I
mean?
like that. Mm-hmm.
Now, and I pulled out the etymology dictionary real quick so I could get it right. But when you look at the word pray as a verb, it actually is to ask earnestly, beg. So it's just like that saying, what you're saying is that's like that saying, be careful what you ask for. The whole monkey's paw, right? So we talked about that when we talked about love, you know, and how the word love means a different grade. So you're actually praying for a totally different grade of person when you're misunderstanding the functionality of the word love. And then you get them, and then you wonder why there's no satisfaction or it's so short-lived because you were really, you're praying for something you didn't really want. And then when you got it, you were asking like, how did you get here? Right? Nobody's
Yeah,
supposed to
yeah,
be.
yeah. um, yeah, and words are powerful. I saw I don't want to veer off too much, but it's pertinent to what we're talking about at this moment of words are very powerful. Like I saw this slogan that you hear, words, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never harm me. Bullshit. Words kill people off. They're powerful. And because there's an intention behind what you're saying,
Mhm.
the intention is also important. So,
Hmm.
and people know the difference. They can feel the difference. They can sense your intention. Um, so yeah, intention, because that seems to be really important where what we're talking about. What your intentions are in anything that you're doing. I don't know why, something just told me to bring that up. Attention is an important part of what we're talking about as well. But yeah, but the possession thing, I'm curious as to what how you correlated the last podcast when we were talking about what separates these people like David Bowie and Steve Jobs and from others, why they're able to achieve what they're achieve and others don't. And you possession came to you. How did you come to that correlation? I'm curious about that.
So you expressed how words can kill, right?
Yes.
Now, and that's because they possess intent, right? The words
Right.
themselves possess intent as well as the user possess intent, you know? Um, regardless of what your user intent is, you can't easily hold water in a calendar, right? In a strainer, right?
Okay.
So the intent of the strainer is to allow water to flow through it. So it's going to be really difficult for the user to create a different experience from that pre-programmed intent. Now, words can kill, and that's just not saying physically, so I'm taking it out, we're going to expand it to the infinity of not just physically kill you like your body, but it can kill your dreams. It can kill your sense of self-esteem. It can kill your relationship, like connections, what held them together, right? Somebody say the wrong thing one day, then it offends this person, and that person throws away the whole relationship. That same person that you had that relationship with for 10 years, right, is the same person that said that. You know what I mean? So something about what they said you've been okay with for the last 10 years, whether you realize it or not. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Mm-hmm.
But or it may have been the realization of. But yeah, words can kill a lot of things. Now, what happens? That's if the malintended user possesses the word to use on you, right? It's got to be able to hit your trigger, right? If it's not the right word, it may not trigger you to sing. True. So they have to be in possession of the right word. They have to have the right intent, right? And possess the opportunity to deliver the blow, which goes back to, what was it? Strike, striking. Oh, hold on. What's word? Yeah. Stroke, something laid down, right? And then, so that was law. So a stroke, and we get into to ownership, the word possess, it was a striking blow. Okay, so possess and ownership, when you look at to have, to hold, to own, all right, we come into, so what I'm looking at is where striking is like, think about your contract. When you redline something, you scratch that out, you change it. You see? So,
well, when you talk about all of these, the people that, what do they all have in common? Some would say they possess an ability to overcome doubt. They possess an ability to overcome words that others say to them and not to take them in.
Yes.
Not to take them in to be true.
That's exactly where I was building up to. Is the words have the intent, right? The sender of the words possesses the intent that they're sending it to you at. But what if you possess the anti-intent? Kind of like the body armor of words. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Remember that one saying, I'm rubber, you're glue. Whatever you say bounces off of me and sticks to you. Right. So
that's a spell.
Yeah. So you activate that spell that you were seeing as a nursery rhyme as a little kid. You know what I mean? You put
you're in intent, putting a bubble around yourself, literally, verbally.
Yes.
Back on you.
Energetically and everything. And that's why one point out, you was talking about that they possess a certain thing about them. And when they walk in the room, you can feel people's energy. That's your auras. That's that bubble. It's the magnetic force field you got around you. And you can sense things beyond your own physical touch. So the anti-intent is your aura. And this is where we go into like attracts like. So what they possessed was their polarity, right, is going to repel what's not aligned with their, what they're attracted to through magnetics.
Not aligned with their desire.
Right.
What they desire. Very interesting. But I like that they possess this quality, ability to it goes back to I think we said this in one of the other podcasts, David Bowie talking about the first time he saw the Rolling Stones, and he had seen one of the fans say to Mick Jagger, you need to cut your hair. And Mick Jagger, having the bubble, said,
Right.
why? So I could look like you.
Right. I like when you tell that story.
And and David Bowie said, that's when I knew that's what I want. I want to possess that ability to deflect, bounces off of me, right back at you.
Right.
That was a really great way to understand what sets them apart, because they are, like Dave Grohl has a great quote that I just love and I share it from time to time. There is only one you, and that is your power.
Mm.
If you get your head into the right place, we all have our own fingerprint, right? Our own unique DNA. Why would you want to be something other than that? We're not designed to be exactly the same. We're like snowflakes, each and every one is beautiful and unique in itself.
Right.
If they were all carbon copies, it'd be boring.
Exactly. That you heard of this, you heard of the expression state your claim?
Oh, yes, I have. Oh, I like that though.
Tell me what that does for you right now.
State your claim. Because that confirms the fact that you can claim it. Nobody can claim something for you but yourself, really. Truly, it has to come from yourself. So claim it also is a confirmation in a sense. You claim it, you're confirming it is claiming it. The claim ties in with possession. That's very interesting. That's very interesting.
And then now we're getting into my favorite part. Invoke, because see, this is how it happens. Like many people are afraid of things because they don't realize they do it every day anyway. And so they're afraid of it. Like people are afraid to hear the word witchcraft or even craft by itself. But then when you say, oh, you mean, we went to spelling class, we're all here casting spells, whether realize or not. It's like, oh, I can't get away from that, because when you do the research, it's absolutely true. And when you look at the word technology, it originally referred to grammar. We've talked about that. And because grammar was our first tool, our first technology, you know what I mean? Because why? Because we had spelling, we were casting spells. Even certain books said, let there be light. And then there was light, you know what I mean? Like it didn't go out and build it didn't go out and screw a light bulb. They said he just spoke it, right? So
songs,
playing
poems.
Oh, everything.
Poems had a lot of power. They're very powerful. That's why people will listen to a song and the lyrics draw them in. And they get you on a certain wavelength of alignment with what that artist is talking about.
Yeah.
And it's funny, this is really pertinent to something that I just went through in the last 24 hours. A friend of mine said, I really need help with my resume. So we sat down, and man, I'll try to make this brief as possible, but it's really important. Because it just blew my mind how deep this goes, what we're talking about, words and how you put them together and formulate them and all that. So my songwriting kind of helped me in coming up with a good resume for myself. And so she showed me her resume, and I was like, oh dear, no wonder nobody's calling you. She didn't put anything in there. She didn't put any details or anything. The devil's in the details,
She claimed nothing.
And we'll get back to that, but that one's been circling around my head lately, the devil's in the details. But anyways, it's pertinent to what I'm talking about, because when we sat down and she told me, so I said, let's go through your work experience. And I said, let's talk about what you did and let's spell that out. So when they look at your resume, they see you in their mind in action. You're painting a picture for them with these words of what your value is, your experience, and what you have to bring to the table with that experience. You're wording in a way that gives them a rough synopsis. So you only have so much time and space to do that. And there's an art to that. Um, and it just really drove home to me that the power of words and what it creates and the manifesting aspect of it. So after we got done, it was just the difference between the original resume and the one we ended up with was like night and day. I said, so now you got all this who you are. This is who you are. This is your character.
You got to take ownership of that, right?
Bring to the table. Yeah. She goes, I didn't even realize, no one's ever helped me do this. I go, girl, look at, you got it going on. You got it on paper to confirm you got it going on. When they see that, they're going to go, whoa. The more descript you are, you're showing them those details in action. You know, the words in action and showing all that you've done with your life. It was really powerful. I got so much out of it too. I got just as much out of it for my own self. And it brought back songwriting and the power of words and how you put them and the way that you describe things, and that helps that person visualize. But and also in those moments of talking about her strengths and what she's looking for in a job, by typing out all that she's already done, she's putting out there what she wants to receive, specifically a job that already utilizes her skills, which was what the objective was. Before her work history, we put an objective, and the objective said to utilize my skills and continue to learn and grow. And it was just, wow, it really was very powerful in the idea of manifestation creation through your wording, and also claiming it as you're writing it. So I just thought I would share that. Oh, it was really wonderful. Oh.
I'm really glad that you actually shared that and the timing of it, because you brought up the artist right prior to that, and then when you went into the devil's in the details, right? And a good resume is like your contract of your ownership of yourself, right? What you take ownership of about yourself, of that you want to like you said, add value, incorporate into another organization, right? A collective. So but it's really key that you brought up artists, especially that, you know, we're both into music. I just dropped it's actually going crazy right now, a song called
I love it.
Skyscraper. And
I love it.
thank you. The premise was something very simple, you know, to try and get people to put the guns down, just think about it. And that's the energy. But like you said, the way you put the words together, it feeds everything. You know what I mean? It feeds that's how you do it. You got to get everybody, and then you give them that nice little, now bring it down. You know what I'm saying? It might save a life one day. You know what I mean? So the labels, right? When the artists get into these contracts, and we talk about the redlining and the strike through, and how it changes you, a strike or a stroke, right? It changes you in some way, shape, or form. Definitely how you feel at the moment, right? But a label puts together a contract, and then you hear a lot of artists talking about, either directly or indirectly, how they sold their soul to the devil and all this stuff. And the labels create a contract where they actually possess you. And because, like you said, you're not in tune with the words, and it's a Valentine's Day thing appearance. Hey, I love you. Be mine, right?
Right.
Boom, be mine. You're like, oh, I'm signed. Yeah, I'm here going to the label.
I'm yours. Giving away your power, giving away your whole self, ownership, agreeing with the ownership mentality.
Your likeness, your creativity. They own everything. They possess everything. So go ahead and speak on that.
Oh, for sure. Okay, so when they say the devil's in the details, what does that mean? That means that if you don't have the details, shenanigans can happen. When it's gray, it leaves it open for interpretation. So when you say that toxic person, that's not clear. So it allows people to say whatever, to add to it whatever they want. But when you say abusive, now you really know what you're talking about. And I don't like these things under the guise. That's why the details are very important. Because if you don't have that there, people can make stuff up and add anything they want. The lines get blurred and muddied, and this allows shenanigans to happen when there isn't clarity. So I don't know if that makes sense, and it ties into what we were saying, but
no, it definitely does. And I want to I want to expand on. I want to give you the gate, right? I want to give you the gate to the expansion, right? Because now you have, this is where the possession comes into play, because who possesses the idea determines what they're going to feel, what the intent is, right? Going to be translated, because everybody thinks differently. So you got when you said abusive, right? So when you say abusive, you know, somebody's going to think physical. Somebody's going to think sexual.
It is physical. Yeah.
Watch this. Watch this. Somebody's
okay.
going to think physical. Someone's going to think sexual. Someone else is going to say verbal or emotional abuse. Now, you ain't going to tell me that the one talking about verbal or emotional abuse is going to be looked at the same when they say abuse and describe it as the ones that's been physically and sexually abused. Then you got mentally and psychological abuse. Then you got financial and economic abuse. And then cultural and identity abuse. I just looked it up real quick. They said there were 6. I just wanted to put that on the table because I thought about the different splits of abuse when you said that. So I wanted to get a accurate talking point. So look at the cross attack on each other from the different populations just in abuse itself.
Yes, that's true. However, what is abuse? It's a harmful behavior to another person. It's a behavior that's harmful to another. That's the key to that. Then you can get to the specifics, but it's a lot better than just saying toxic. Mm-hmm. Toxic is subjective. Abuse, not so much. Abuse is abuse. Like, I don't care if you add sexual to it or whatever. It's harm to another person. Let's call it what it is. We've got things like bullying. What is bullying? Abuse. Let's just call it what it is. Quit calling it bullying, and that pardons it. Bullying has become, oh, that's just what we do. We bully. No. Just what we do is abuse. That's what we've been doing, is abusing one another and just giving people, well, you know, they're just a bully. You mean an abuser.
Pacifying.
That's the line. Toxic, what is, toxic is just not clear enough. It's gray, it's muddy, and it isn't really having the real conversation. Just say what it is. Harmful behavior. Mm-hmm. Don't say toxic anymore. It's just another way to section people, put people off, and it doesn't address the behavior. That's what I have the problem with it. Obviously, you can see I get really excitable. I don't like that. I don't like the narcissist. What does a narcissist look like? Mm-hmm. Talk about that. There is no narcissist, because we all do. We all in society, we make fun of each other, we bully each other, we put each other down, we compete, measure ourselves against one another. These are all harmful behaviors under the guise of these titles that have allowed it to continue. Because you argue the title and not what's happening, not what's going on that's creating this.
I like how you said under the guise of the title. Go ahead.
Under the guise. And me and my best friend, we talked about under the guise. You just see that under the guise of, no, just say what it is. That's not, you're really not saying anything at all. If you want to talk about toxic, let's talk about what it is. What does toxic look like? Let's get specific. When you make it that global, you can make anybody toxic. Anybody could put you in that box. But really, more than anything, with any wording, if you're not addressing the behavior, you're not really having a real conversation. That's all I got to say. You're not talking about the behavior that created this outcome and this problem that you're currently dealing with. You're not really talking about it. That's all I'm going to say. And I know a lot of doctors, they're not going to like me, but even in the psychology world, this person has this disorder and that disorder. But you're not talking about what caused it.
Right.
You're not talking about the cause. We always talk about cures and separating people and everything, instead of how did we get here? What did
So
we do that created this situation?
I like that you bring up the word disorder, and I like, because that's definitely getting to the what we need to talk about in the continuance of. I like how you bring up the word disorder, because I was just watching something on YouTube in the last 24 to 48 hours. I got a new song I just wrote, so I wrote that today. So I can't remember exactly where I watched it at, but yeah, look out for that one. It's coming soon. But
Okay.
what they were talking about was the order. Like when you put in an order, it has to be paid for. And I mean, just to Campbell soup the whole like 30-minute conversation. And we know what the word pay means, to satisfy, right? So now when I hear you say, just for it, all that, whizzed back through my head, because when you said disorder, it made me look at that word differently in this context for the first time, because now I see disorder, an order needs to be paid for, which means to satisfy. So what we're looking at is they have a dissatisfaction, right? Or it's not satisfied, or this is not being satisfied, which now doesn't free them. It actually shows how they're obligated to create satisfaction there. And there's a disconnect, right? Not to say that's given to the public like that when they say it, but just me interpreting it now that we know what the words mean. Now, I want to tie that into the round that I had in the chamber for this, because I'm going back to when you said under the guise of the title, and I think
Yes.
that's very super
Labels and
imperative.
titles and slogans too, like curiosity killed the cat, like we talked about in the last thing. That's not quite accurate. It doesn't. There's another sentence that goes along with that, but it got condensed. That has been a form of gaslighting, and I think a lot of these titles and disorder and whatever are it's gaslighting.
Yeah,
it's pigeonholing and gaslighting. Yeah, and then with the disorder thing, what I get frustrated about, and this has been a source of frustration for me, is again we go back to when you talk about disorders. No, you don't fix the flower. If they do in fact have a disorder, what caused it? Then you're having a real conversation. But what you're doing is labeling, pigeonholing, and telling us there's something wrong with them. Hey, honey, look around you. I don't know anyone that doesn't have a disorder.
Go back to your flower statement.
It's because the environment.
Yes, that's
the environment is toxic, abusive. Steve and I, the environment is very abusive. Who's not going to have a disorder? It's not even that they do have a disorder. Their reaction to an abusive society is normal. They don't have a disorder. They're having a normal mental and emotional and physical reaction to a harmful environment. But no, they got this disorder. There's something wrong with them. Banish them. Put them in a mental hospital or whatever.
So I'm glad you brought up the word. I'm glad you gave your flower treatment. And then that led us to environment, right? And we talked about the enrichment of the environment and the success of that. Now, I think we have to, me, I'm always the two-side coin, because we got to look at the infinity, right? And the way you put it is the duality of things. So when we look at the environment, we absolutely have toxicities in the environment. We also have to consider other things like appropriateness of the environment, which includes everything: time, space, location, everything, right, in the environment. So the people in the relationship that's doing the action, because what you're building on is action. And I want to showcase something that's going to neutralize the action and make it more about the possessor, right? The possessor of the sender with the intent of them, and the receiver with their intent. Okay. For example, something pull my hair, right? if it's in one location, it's a great thing and at a great time, right? And many couples experience that and like it. In the wrong setting and environment, it gets you a lawsuit. You know what I'm saying? You just walk down the street, randomly pull somebody's hair. It may not go as well for you. You know what I mean? So, but you can see how that same label of abuse under this situation is actually enjoyable and sometimes even summoned, right, under this other environment. So it's all in the possessor. Beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, right?
Well, what abuse is, you're intently doing something to harm that person.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay, so we're getting off the action and the intent.
Yeah. So if you're if let's say you got a sexual relationship where you like it rough, that's not abuse. That's agreement. You have what is the word? Consent. What abuse is when somebody does something without someone's consent. That's the importance of that word. Abuse means harming, and with the intent to harm. That's a very different thing. So when you're pulling the hair to harm somebody is very different when you're pulling the hair to be erotic. That's not abuse. That's pleasure. So it really comes down to not the title, but the action.
So would it be
Does that
safe
make
to
sense?
say, yeah, because what I was getting at is for someone that finds joy in the abuse, they wouldn't see it as abusive, which is why people stay in situations that maybe others wouldn't, like somebody else, maybe this other wouldn't want their hair pulled or don't like it, so they wouldn't stay in that same situation long because they don't enjoy it. What goes back to the disorder, they wouldn't be satisfied with that. So there's a dissatisfaction using the word order as pay, which means to satisfy. So anytime we're creating a dissatisfaction, we're having a disorder. So
interesting.
That ties into the last podcast with the people, because they would have been in disorder, right? Or they would have dissatisfied themselves if they didn't act, there you go, the way they did to become who they were and make what happens. So I want to get this on the table for you.
I like that.
Well, go ahead, speak on that real quick, and then I'll jump to
it. Action. I would say that's also if you have the curiosity, right? That's what made them have a different result. But it's not just the curiosity, because the action that followed the curiosity. They showed up. Number one, they showed up. They had the curiosity, and that's great. But then they went the step further to find out. They made the phone call. They showed up for the appointment. They asked the questions. And that's very important distinction to put on the table, where, they weren't just curious. They actually went there. They actually, went to the bank to get the loan, or, got out there and hustled and whatever they had to do to manifest what they wanted. So yeah, action is really important as well.
It absolutely is very important, because there's action in every satisfaction, right? That was a little quote that I saw that I thought was pretty cool, because there is, to spell it, if you guys are visualizing the word satisfaction, there actually is action in every satisfaction. Yeah. So that's also true for dissatisfaction, like we just covered. The on one case, it's going to be cool and okay and appropriate over here with these, but in another situation will be totally inappropriate, and what I wanted to put on the table
duality,
with him,
right?
yeah, the duality, the infinity of it all. So, and that goes back into when you said the action and the intent, that now we're to satisfaction and dissatisfaction, which is order and disorder, So with that on the table, let's get back to invoke and evoke. I got my little notes here for you. I'm gonna take my time with it. So both stem from the Latin vocar, meaning to call. Invoke means to call upon, and is usually used when someone calls upon law, a right, or authority, right? Evoke on the other hand, means to call forth, and it's often used to refer to calling upon memories or emotions. What is that? You want me to read it again?
Evoke and invoke.
So evoke.
I don't know that I was ever aware of the distinct difference between those two words.
Yeah, they both mean to call. Invoke means to call upon, like law, authority. Remember we said authority means the book or the quote that satisfies the question. There go that word again, satisfy, right? The book or the quote that satisfies that question is authority. So to call upon the authority, the law, or the right you have. You see what I'm saying? Like you said earlier, when you have consent, you're allowing them to call upon their right to acceptance, right?
Right.
Which is a law. They're giving you authority. Okay. Now, evoke, on the other hand, means to call forth, and it's often used to refer to calling upon memories or emotions. And this is where you get into also spirits, angels, demons, etc. But think about them as emotions and memories, which is their energy as well. So
yeah.
What does that do for you in this context?
Well, I would say if you're clear about what you want, and your desired outcome, those things are going to be important. In creating it, I guess I want to say it has something to do with the creation of what you want, an element of creation manifesting. Once you have what it is in your mind you want, then you can focus and call it. The word that comes to mind is summoning too, summoning something to you. You're summoning it.
There go the power of words.
Yes. But then also you have to understand that when you do that, there's a lot of responsibility with that. So
acceptance of the contract.
Yes. So I think it just all comes down to just being mindful of what you're asking for. Really be clear. Clarity is so important when you're wanting to manifest. And you got to look at every detail. For instance, like my friend is saying, I just want to get a job. I'm like, no, you don't just want to get a job. You want a job where you're treated well, you're paid appropriately, you're respected, you're honored, you're working in a teamwork environment. Be specific when you ask the universe for what you want. You'll just get whatever just comes along. If you're going to conjure all that you want. Really, that's what this resume was about. She couldn't get anyone to call her back. She didn't fill in the details. She just went, I went here from this to this, no details. There were no details for them to understand who she is, what her background is, which is the whole point. And giving a resume so they can get a rough synopsis of who you are and what you've done and what you're after, and if you're a good fit. So it was really powerful exercise for her to get to. She's like, I had no idea that I had this much going on. I didn't feel I was worth anything. I'm like, because you didn't even know, you hadn't even looked into your background and all your actions that you've taken and what they led you to and everything in between. Once you get that on paper, like, dang, I kind of got it going on. And she does. It was really powerful. It was just such an empowering thing to be a part of.
Self-observation.
And like, I didn't even realize. I'm like, yeah, see, so now you know what you got, and you got it on a piece of paper. Here's who I am. Here's what I represent. Here's what I bring to the table in writing. I bring it to the table. This is what I got for you. And
I like it.
Now you're going to cast a line and you're going to fish. And I said, do not let them come to you. Don't beg.
I like clear.
Yeah.
Clarity is good. It brought the clarity. And what you said, important. You said it's very important, because when you said you got to be clear about what you want, that's everything we've been talking about. And to go back to your question that you asked me earlier about how, like, basically how are they able to stay in line, pretty much, right? I think that's what it is, clarity. And we mentioned it, of the destination. It's everything, yes. So now what I'm getting at is, when you're clear on your destination, your goal, your relationship, right? You're able to invoke and evoke the necessary possessions. You see? So when you're invoking, you're going to call upon the laws you need, you know what I mean, the rights you have, and the authorities to put you in motion to accomplish your goal. Also, when you're clear about your goal, you're going to then evoke, which is the external. You're going to call forth, it's often used to call forth memories and emotions, right? So you're going to call forth the feeling of accomplishment, right? And you're going to meet it there. You're going to call forth the memories. Okay, I don't know how to get there, but guess what? It's inside of you. Somebody else just reminds you what's already there, because we're connectively one. So all information is shared. We just got to bring it out of each other. Speaking of which, you said earlier, when you described the gentleman, you said there's something about him, right? That's saying, right? Now, how about the flip side of that coin? They bring something out of me. Ooh, but they ain't practicing witchcraft out there, right? But they talk about they in love. You see what I'm saying? So they bring something out of you. So guess what? You're either going to invoke, or someone else can invoke for you. You can either evoke, or someone else can evoke for you. So you got the person saying that there's something about them, meaning their broadcast, and you got the other person saying, wow, they bring something out of me, right? You know what I mean? Because they went in there and said, and pulling this out, and you didn't even know it was there. Now, how does that tie into this, like, Valentine's Day, and like you said, being married to each other, belonging to each other, you know? Because this is the way you need to do it around here. If you're going to be my girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, you know what I mean? This is how we do. You're pulling that shit out of them. You're evoking and invoking, right?
Invoking, yeah. And I like that. This is what advertising lives on.
Oh, yeah.
Marketing and advertising live on these principles we're talking about.
Yeah, you can't tell a graphic
the
designer.
Power of suggestion. Wording comes back to the spells again. The power of suggestion, very powerful thing. You can invoke and evoke a lot of things by how you word it, how you put it. Like, I was thinking about one of my favorite singer-songwriters, Tom Petty, and how his greatest talent was he could say a lot with very few words. Like in The Last Dance with Mary Jane, the opening line of that song is, she grew up in an Indiana town, had a good-looking mama who never was around. He just told a story in just that one sentence that everybody gets. He painted that picture so you could see exactly what he was talking about and what he was invoking. Or evoking, both at the same time, by spelling out that scenario. But the brilliance was that he was able to do it in just a few words.
Yes.
But now he's telling this story and you can visualize it. So now you're on this journey with it, you know? Exactly. Like a little, they take you on a trip, a lot of singers and musicians, especially when there's a narrative element to their writing, which he was king, one of the greatest, in my opinion, of evoking and invoking and emotion and an experience by listening to the song. Even, I don't know, it just made me think of that, what you were saying, made me think of him and artists and how they reach people, how they impact people with their talent, their ability to communicate through their lyrics and their music. Influence people, inspire people.
Inspiration. Like Johnny Five said on Short Circuit, input, need more input. You ever see that movie with the robot?
No, I
That's like one
haven't.
of my favorite ones, man.
Oh, you've mentioned a few movies. Movies are hard for me. I'm so high strung. It's really hard for me to sit still.
He was like reading a book, like input, need more input. Like, so speaking of with input and everything, right? And I like how you said that the songwriters and everything, the good ones take and the performances take you on a journey, take you on a trip.
Yep.
And it actually Campbell soups all of this into
I
something
like that.
very,
Yeah.
very close to your, very close to your heart and your own personal story. And I always appreciate hearing your growth and development with it, because it they had you tripping, you know what I mean? And they had you on a journey, and it took a long time to create that trajectory and that inertia. And then it took you a while to then counter it and change it to because see, this ties into you releasing the stupid girl, quote unquote, that you call it, and embracing the smart girl that you said was there all along. See, you invoked your right to evict the stupid girl for the smart girl, right? To be able to recall, refer to call upon the memories and emotions of actually being the smart girl that you knew was there all along.
Yes.
See? So they was
Yeah.
evoking and invoking something in you because you didn't have your
Yeah.
anti-intent up. But
Yeah.
once you got aligned with your purpose, you then invoked and evoked everything that you need to build yourself to be exactly how you knew what you wanted to be, which goes back to having, you were saying, having clarity. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's why everything changed for you. Because when you evoked and invoked the right personal bubble environment, now you're properly outfitted to go and do the battle that you must battle and face in the larger environment that we call the earth,
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
What do you
Now the question is, the word possession. Um, how did these guys come to possess these abilities to transcend the constructs and the limitations that were taught about in society? How did they? Okay, so curiosity, action, but I think there's more to it than that too. I think there's
magnetism.
what's that?
Magnetism.
Magnetism.
There's an old quote.
I like that. I like that. Go ahead. Go ahead.
There's an old quote that I refer to a lot, and it'll definitely give you a runway to take off with this. The name doesn't become the man. The man becomes the name. So to go back to everything that we just went over, there's power in words. Regardless of what word it is, it's a title, right? That has intention, which has a contract that you agree to the terms and conditions, like we went over. If you haven't seen it before, check out our other podcasts. The last two, they're all kind of connected to this. Actually, last like three. But so there's a contract with that you sign up for. So the man becomes the name, whether that's, superintendent or whatever position title was on the resume, you know what I mean? So you started invoking things to create, to fulfill that title's duties, right?
Yes.
Properly.
Yes.
Relationships, all of that is you becoming the name, or the possession possesses you. So possession of the title allows the title to possess you. Just like when you were in
Yes.
possession of I'm the stupid girl. But when you got rid of that, you kicked that shit the fuck out and you moved in smart girl, boom. Same you, right? What changed? What changed? Your contract, what you were possessing, what you were holding on to, what you had with you. You let that shit go.
Carrying.
Yeah, you let that shit go. So now you no longer possess that, and you refuse to pick it back up. And you went over here, and now your hands are open to reach and grab what you actually wanted to hold on to all along. And that's what happens in people's personal lives with relationships. That's what tears apart families when it's time to be ripped apart, because this person wants to grip onto this, like Steve Jobs, and he was never there for his family until he was old and ready to go out. You know what I'm saying? Right?
Yeah. Yes. And you said something just a few beats back that's really important about titles is, and we've said this before, you know, the title does not make the man, the behavior does. But what you do with that title is what makes you what you are.
Mm-hmm.
It's what the monk was saying. My actions are the only thing I possess.
Mm-hmm.
They're the very foundation for which I stand upon. So how do you possess something? Take action. You move in that direction. You know, if you want to possess a job, you got to get out of your house. You got to show up. You got to go on the interviews. Got to make phone calls. Got to send the resume. You know, so that is a huge factor in these successful people. You know, people that pursued their dreams and achieved them. You know, they showed up. They, you know, even we've talked about this before. I think it was Woody Allen that said, you know, life is, you know, what did he say? 10% perspiration, 90% showing up. And that's huge. It's so important. Like years ago when I was in a band, the guitarist, he wanted to do all these demos and just cold call them, send them to record companies and whatnot. It's like, that's not going to get it done. They don't know you. They don't have any firsthand experience with you.
Mm-hmm.
We got to play live. Anytime anything happened with my bands, anytime I ever got any notice, it wasn't sending out demos. It was playing live gigs where somebody in the audience knew somebody in the industry. And they said, oh man, I saw your show. I want to give your demo to my friend who worked for Sony as an A&R guy there, da, 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 you know? That's how you, yeah, do the cold call. That's cool. But personal experience is so important. Like when I was looking for work and I was telling this girl, don't wait when you apply for the job and you send the resume, make a hard copy, go down to the place and say, yes, I've applied online. I thought I'd show up and introduce myself. Here's my resume. I got like hired on the spot, like 3 or 4 times doing that. People are just blown away that I showed up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and not only that, I got to see if I wanted to work there. I went down there,
Right.
I did my recon. Do I want to work for these people? Just something, the title doesn't show who they are. You get
Right.
into the office building, you get a bad vibe, you know, you don't want to work there. It's just a lot of action is such a huge part, obviously, in manifesting anything, is what I'm saying. But
Yeah.
it is one of the things that I feel strongly that that's why the David Bowies of the world, they got out of their comfort zone. They did
Or
things that other people wouldn't do, you know, that we're afraid to do.
or instead of saying it like they got out of their comfort zone, maybe they actually got into their comfort zone.
Yes.
Maybe
they got out of the construct, the limitations, the box that you're put in. They stepped out of it because there is no box. The box is an illusion. That's the principle that they were aware of.
Yes. That's the problem.
They were aware of that. Yes. It puts you in a box and you're imprisoned by that. I was imprisoned by the stupid girl.
Right. The actions match the contract, which is only in existence based off the title. So
yes.
When you break that mold, right, you could say, so synonyms for that is grip, like get a grip on yourself. You know what I mean? So think about it. You got to handle. Who's handling you? Oh, I'm going to handle them, right? You know what I'm saying?
Word. That's a really good word.
So who's got a grip on you like the coffee mug? You see what I'm saying? That title, that's when your actions fit this way, right? Is that the, you know?
Think of that song, you really got a hold on me.
Right.
Really got a hold. Yeah, like you, that's really, I like that.
So we want to get a grip on ourselves. Wow. And then another word that really shows it is like restraint. You know what I mean? I was restrained. Like when the police pull you over, you'd be like, hey, are you detaining me or are you restraining me? If you're not detaining me, then, you know, we should be free to go here. You know what I'm saying? But the word restrain means they got a grip on you. You know what I'm saying? Now you're supposed to have the grip on yourself. You see? So
Yeah.
it's the same thing with any relationship. You know, the job can get a grip on you. You lose yourself in the job, that relationship, you lose yourself in the marriage, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et
Oh,
cetera.
yes. And it's so challenging. It's very challenging to maintain a selfhood while you're in a relationship. Any relationship. I mean, and that's why being mindful is so important. What's the common denominator in all of this? Where you are in your mind, what's going on here and here in your heart.
I like that.
And have a deep conversation with both of them. Where's my heart? Is my mind connected with my heart? Do I have internal conflict because they're not in alignment with one another? And it gets confusing. It's constant challenge.
You know, that brings us back to the word clarity.
So important with everything. You know, I mean, that's why I just question everything. It's important to question me. Go and find out for yourself, right? Buddha said that, and some others inadvertently in other ways, but you know, it's important to question because if details aren't being revealed, what's going on then? Find out if there are details not being revealed. Get details are so important. They're just everything, really, on so many levels. It's becoming more and more clear to me as we have these conversations, and I have them with other friends. And this resume thing really drove that home for me. And the person, it's just like, I can't even tell you the night and day difference between the first resume and what we ended up with. It was just so powerful. All the details were there. There was no guessing. You could, and that's when someone is interested in hiring somebody, the more you put those details, the less work they have to do, because they have to go through how many resumes a day, you know, it's a lot. So
right.
the more you help them, that right there is just help them to be able to assess who you are, where you're at, what you bring to the table. If you're able to do that right out of the gate, they're going to call you because the details are on the table, on the document, plain as day to be seen. Clarification. Clarity.
I think that's a very significant word of the day. And I think what a lot of times people really actually need to clarify is, are you in a relationship with this person that you give this title to? Are you in a relationship with this title that you share with this person? Or are you in a relationship with yourself in the title with this person? You see what I'm saying? And I think that's three totally different views. What do you think about that?
First thing that comes to my mind, and this is something that's so true. You're not there to save each other. You're there to hold each other. You're holding each other's hand while you save yourself. No one can save you. No one can figure you out but you. It's not your partner's job to do that for you, and vice versa. You hold each other's hand and you support each other in you doing that for yourself. That's what a true healthy relationship is. First, the relationship with yourself is intact and whole. Then you actually have something that's worthwhile to give to another person. There's freedom involved. Freedom.
So when Steve Jobs said, hey, I want to be the next biggest, I'm going to own the next biggest computer manufacturing company ever, then he signed a contract, had a Valentine's Day with it, got married to the idea, invoked and evoked everything he needed, right, to align with the contract that he signed for himself. And then he woke up one day, when someone else got a grip on him and started talking about kids. And he was like, oh, kids, yeah, woo. But he was under the spell of Apple bringing it to life, right? Whatever title you want to give that, the CEO, the entrepreneurship, whatever. The spirit of entrepreneurship, right? So he was under that spell until someone else got a grip. Hey, look, I got a grip on you. Your kids, look, wake up, snap out of it. Look, damn it, they're grown. They're off in boarding school. We don't even know who they are anymore. You missed everything. Where were you at? You know, you're like, whoa, the fog is going off. The clarity comes back.
Balance. All of this, and this is funny that you brought this up because it's something I'm struggling with myself. Balance. What happened was he lost himself. That was not all that he was. The Microsoft man, or not Microsoft, Apple or whatever.
We're with you.
That wasn't what he. So when he became ill, he became terminally ill. You realized, oh my gosh, it's good that he was successful and he achieved all these things, but he also missed out, and he didn't have to. You know, he didn't have to miss out on. You don't have to give up anything. It's balance. You can do them, but you have to make sure that you're balanced. And he didn't do that, so he lost a lot of. He gave up a part of himself, the family man, to his detriment.
Yeah.
He missed out on the other aspects of himself. And it's just when it's important to have balance, because man, believe, you know, if you are that powerful a person, being a family man can also help bring other things to your business, qualities about yourself to your business, and vice
Possibly.
versa. They're very yeah,
it's possible. It's possible
yeah,
that it could have actually destroyed his business at the same time. You see, that's what, you know, like we talked about this, and that's why I take the stance on it on, you know, I know there's gonna be some reaction, but when you pull away the emotion from it, right? Because remember what they say, invoking is the right, or invoking is to refer to, call upon memories and emotions. You see what I'm saying? So when you hear that situation, it's like, to me, it's like, yeah, you know, he missed some time. And I'm sure other people be like, oh my God, how could you just make it sound that you're fair? Right? We got the two different extremes. But in reality, you know, like I mentioned before, that's the cost of doing business to do what he did. That's the cost of that busyness. And what is busyness? You're some sort of action, right? So that action you were talking about earlier, there's what it say? A force, there's always an equal and opposite force reaction, right?
cause and effect.
Cost of doing business. So yeah, it could have added some. It was possible that it could have made him better and a better leader at the business. Or it's possible that it could have totally derailed him, and Apple wouldn't be what it is today. Which I'm not saying would be a gift or a curse for the world, but it just wouldn't be what it is today. You know.
But the other part of that is he made a commitment.
When he was under
With that,
contract with his
he
Apple
made a
spirit.
commitment to the woman, and then he brought children in the world, and he let them down. You know, he bit off more than he could chew, maybe.
No.
But you know, so you know
I,
what I mean. He was not there for his children. He wasn't.
so
They,
what are
you
we
know,
invoking?
so don't have children if you can't do the deal. If, having children, that's a very serious thing. You're talking
Okay.
about another human being you're bringing into the world.
So let's look at
And
this.
so
Let's
you know
look.
what I mean? It's like not only did it affect him, but it really affected his children and his
It
wife, you know.
it
So
it's touchy, but I see what you're saying, and I know that's the first thing that probably comes to many people's minds, right? Now let's play this role, because I always like to say it's always the perfect day, and then it's up to us to figure out why. So what we know, okay, so we got this side. Steve wasn't there forever. I could, you know, you could say the same thing about many people. I could relate to that partially. You know what I'm saying? When you got something that you know is going to change the world, and you got to make a choice between, do I help these few people right here, 4 or 5, 10, whatever it is that your immediate family. In Steve Jobs' case, you're talking immediate family, probably 4 or 5 altogether collectively, including himself. Or do I sacrifice the value to the world for the value to the few? Which now, when we look at that infinity, it's not to say they're going to be together in 10 years anyway, right? It's not to say that put his story together. So he gets frustrated in the garage, doesn't feel as confident about it. Wife comes along, talks him out of doing Apple. He walks away from Apple. Now he's home miserable. I wish I woulda, coulda, shoulda, you know what I mean, but he didn't. And now he's abusive to his family and his children. Why? Because he had a disorder with him. He had an order, and his actions are in disorder of his personal contract with himself. That's who he came on the planet to be. He came on the planet to be Steve Jobs and make Apple. So what we're doing is, when we're talking on one side of the coin, hey, get out of the box. We can't then, in another situation, right, in another possession of the same experience that we call life, say, hey, get back in a box. Either we want to be free or we want to be boxed up. But it can't be just a convenience factor.
Well, okay, so everything you do, you got to be really mindful of your choices. So don't have a family if you can't be there for them.
So when you say be there for,
don't have a family if you cannot be a family man.
So we don't know how.
If you're not able to do that, you know what I mean? It's like, if having a family is a big deal, you have to. This is not like some mamby-pamby little thing you're doing here. You're bringing another person into the world. You have to be a father. You have to be available so that you bring them up into the world in a healthy way that fortifies them so that they go on to be a healthy human being. Okay. If you're not, you know what I mean? So
I do. And
this is the thing. It's, you know, if you know that you're not going to be home, you're going to be really focused and you're going to be gone a lot, don't have children. It's not fair to the child. You've now brought another being into your situation, and it's selfish to have a child in the way that isn't good, because you're going to bring them in here and you're not going to be able to give them what they need. And that's not, it's just not fair. It's not fair to the child. The wife, okay, the child, no, that's really important. If you know that you're a really driven person and your career and your dreams are really important to you, you know, you really got to be mindful when you make a decision to bring a child into that situation. So many people bring children into the world. I just want a child. What if the child? I didn't have children for that reason. I didn't, until I had what I needed in order to be able to give the child what it needed. I just wasn't going to do that just because I wanted a child. What about the child? So are you in a situation where you can provide for that child and its well-being? That's really important. Business, okay, I get that and I understand, but there's also, like, what's the word? Humanity, you know, be humane, be conscientious about your decision. Are you doing it for yourself because you just want a son? What good? I mean, but you're not going to be able to be there for the son. That's just not. It's not fair. To me, that child is paying the price. You're not going to pay the price. He's going to. You really have to be mindful of that. So I probably sounded judgmental, but I'm just saying, before you decide to have a family and a child, you really need to be very honest with yourself as to whether you're going to be able to meet that child's needs.
So, you know, I don't think you're being judgmental. I think that you have a vision, and I appreciate you supplying your vision. A lot of people share that same vision with you, and I think once we go beyond some constructs, some contracts, you know, some titles, we'll expand to the fact that, like, when you were talking about, did you choose to bring a child, a son or daughter, into the world for whatever reason, we're totally not considering the fact that
what kind of world are you bringing men into? What kind of life are you going to be able to provide for them? We're
not considering we're not considering the fact that the son or daughter may have chose its parents as part of an even greater contract. See, you have to have those certain experiences in life to mold you into who you're supposed to become. So there's the acceptance of the environment itself shared by the collective whole. We've all agreed on it. It's acquiescence or agreement.
I don't,
So,
yeah. So like, what if
so
you're,
hold on, watch this.
Okay.
If we could say this on this situation, we could say, hey, the father wasn't never there, this, that, and the other, blah, 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 blah. All this, I got a son or a daughter, and all they would want to have their father in their life. Okay. On the other hand, you could say, hey, you got this really bright kid, and the mother and father were semi around, but they didn't nourish the education factor. So that went to waste. I mean, how can you really prepare yourself for a son or a daughter prior to meeting them and knowing what their needs are? What if you have a special needs son or daughter in the family? They're going to require much more attention than the other kids in the family. That's going to affect them too. Nobody signed up for that. The siblings didn't sign up for that, right? They didn't ask for that disorder, right? Now to take it one step further to show you why, how easily emotions can be calmed, looking at the infinity, you said a person, you're bringing a person into this world. Well, a person by legal definition is also an entity, which is a business or corporation. So now when you have a business, it's like you're absolutely bringing another person into the world that you have to care for and nurture, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So just like that special needs child, son or daughter, is going to take up and consume one or both parents' full attention and affect the rest of the family, this is the cost. That's why I say it's just, you got to look at the cost associated. Yep, the son or daughter is going to pay a price, as well as the parents are going to pay a price. Everybody is a cost to everybody for anything. So now, I mean, it's not like I'm not sensing what you're saying. I'm numb to it for the fact that, like you said, when you decide clearly what you want to do,
Well, I don't believe that people choose their parents. Nobody would choose a pedophile for a parent. Why would someone choose that? And that idea, to me personally, has helped to facilitate abuse. We need to get real serious when we talk about bringing children into this world and being able to provide a healthy environment for them, so that when they have children, they create a healthy environment in the world. If you're not doing that, well, look where we are. Many people have children for selfish reasons. They're not considering the child in the equation. They're not considering the environment they're going to be putting that child in. And if you're not doing that, you really shouldn't have children. I just don't think it's a good idea. The child will pay the price. That's not fair to do to a child. Bring a child into disadvantaged situation. Yeah, and that's what we have. We have a lot of that. A lot of people having children for the wrong reason, and then the child that pays the price. And then what do you have? You're bringing brokenness into the world. Children that don't have to figure things out on their own in unhealthy ways.
You know what?
So yeah.
I think we're discovering. No, I'm glad that we triggered. I'm glad. I mean, not that you went through it, but I'm glad you went through it, right? Yeah,
I know what you mean.
Because it's bringing out this light, and when you brought up the pedophilia a moment ago, I literally, just like this week, I was scrolling through. You get them alerts on the news on your phone and whatever, and you set it for your local area, and it gives you like all the news for your local area and stuff. So I was shocked because apparently, like, I moved to North Carolina. It's going on 8 years. ago. So I, you come down here, you first thing I'm reading the gun laws, I'm reading everything like that, the firearm laws, code, that's all I cared about. What's the gun laws? I see the speed limit. So, but this week though, I got the little alert and I was scrolling through the little feed that'll give you a list of new news, and it was like literally like just this last week, the the legal lawful age limit to marry was like just recently, like this week, made 16 years old. It was 14. And I was like, that's fucking unbelievable, because you would think with all of this conversation about such activities and child abuse and all this stuff, that how could there still be states that have such a, but I mean, they just changed it, but still, for it to have been 14 up until, damn, you know what I mean? Now, on the other end of things, I think what you just helped me, I knew the decision I made and why, because it's always a perfect day, and I could break down, my own reason for doing what I had to do, which I have. When I say is your value to the few worth more than your value to the world? Like, what if all of these great leaders never showed up, like you say, because they were like, nah, got a family, I want to stick home with my family and do the family thing. So you wouldn't have your Gandhi, your Martin Luther King, your, Edison's, your any of those. If they were like, nah, you know what, kiddo, you're more important than the whole world. You know what I'm saying? Now, I know that's a double-edged sword. I know I'm gonna get some feedback, but just what I'm getting at here is what you brought up earlier. You got to show up, right? You got to show up, and to show up, you have to own oneself. Remember, so it's gonna be society is always gonna be looking to have that handle on you. And if okay, we can't pull you with this handle. Okay, this one didn't work. Okay, this one didn't work. Well, how about your kids? Oh, we gotta. And now you're like a fighting a fish, fly fishing now. You got it on the hook now. You want to reel it all the way in. You see what I'm saying? So that's the thing about emotions. That's the thing about titles. And then now you're being possessed by the environment, and you've lost handle on yourself. And I'm not saying everybody need to go out there and disband their family. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying, we can make those arguments. Somebody's gonna wish their kid was in the school that Bill Gates' kids went to, even though he might not have been in their lives. You know what I mean? Somebody's gonna be like, damn, if I could just got my kids. Somebody's always gonna say there's no way to you know what I mean? There's no perfect plan. I can
tell you right now that if we had a different upbringing, my brother would not be dead. Fact. Not the way that it happened. If he was not raised the way that he was, dysfunction, alcoholism, poverty, abuse, neglect, and then you breed a bunch of broken people, they're going to breed more broken people. And that's more important than any business there is. If we don't get right with that, and we don't get healthy in the family unit, I don't care what we're achieving on the technological end.
I got you.
It's suffering. You are perpetuating suffering. Children should not be neglected. I don't care how successful you are, Steve Jobs. You neglected your children. And that's wrong. There's just right and wrong too in things. And don't have children unless you can be available to them emotionally, physically, in every way, shape, or form. That's a big commitment. You're bringing another human being into this world. What kind of world are you bringing them into in their immediate environment? If it's not love and support and availability, you're going to be harming the child. It's harmful to the child. We have a lot of babies having babies. So going back to people getting, pregnant at a very young age, babies raising babies. And what's the cause and effect there? You can't plant shit and think you're going to get anything other than shit trees. I sound real serious and heavy, but
no, this is good.
I am a product. I lost my whole family, my entire family, this way of being that, hasn't focused on the well-being of humans first, their well-being in every way, shape, or form. That's not the focus, then we're not going to have people that have well-being. We have a lot of broken people, which is what we have today, because we just need some restructuring in our priorities, you know.
So I can totally agree with you with that. That's on a macro scale. Just recently did a video on it. That was the success of the crazy upticks in violence. When it sounds like a crazy uptick in violence, but when you look at the numbers, it's actually kind of level. And then when you ask yourself, well, why does it seem like there's an uptick? It's because there's added focus on it, right? From the media and stuff like that, to serve their agendas, right? Potentially. And I think that there's a lot of ground we could cover there, because of course, once we realize that everything is free, it came from the earth, just like we did, right? Just like all life was free. So why does it cost to exist? So that is at the root of everything. It's economics. So I agree with that, but it's bigger.
Value.
Right.
Value.
Right. The quality of life. So
what actually has true value and what doesn't?
As long as our current system is put in place the way it is, capitalist system the way that it is, you will always have highly successful people in wealth, and you will always have poverty in wealth, in the wealth scale.
The haves and the have-nots.
Exactly. So as long as that's a factor, you're always going to, as I touched on in the video I did on the violence, and it basically being systematic from the economy itself, then we're gonna have those conditions. Now what we gotta look at is, when we look back in history, right? We have these great heroic people that we read their stories, and they did this and they conquered that, and they went here and they did this, they created this or idea, concept, or built this magnificent whatever, right? And they had sacrifices to do that the same way we did, right? But what happens is, unless you pull out the microscope in history, you don't really hear about their personal lives. Like, you don't know that Einstein had a divorce, you know what I mean? Like, you don't know that his wife left him because of that, very thing that everybody else celebrates about him. You know what I'm saying?
Bing Crosby was a very successful actor and singer, wonderful singer, but he was an alcoholic who abused his children.
Now, was
badly.
Was the alcoholism part of what made him successful in a singer? Like, that drug put him in a state of whatever it put him in, that he could
achieve anything,
hit the music the way he did. You see what I mean? So now that's a byproduct of what made him great, is now a byproduct of what made him a disaster in another arena.
Yes.
And that's gonna be the same with everybody about something.
And then when you talk about possession, the one thing is the idea that we possess our children and we own our children. It's another one that's wrong. It's inaccurate. We're there to guide them. They're not our possession. They have a right to have their own boundaries, what they're comfortable with and not comfortable with. And people have been taught that they're a reflection of you as the parent. Go to, like in the Breakfast Club, they're talking about the expectations from their parents to be what their parents felt they needed to be instead of and so you only have your parents do that, you have school doing that too, but just this idea that children aren't, when you have them, they're your possession is inaccurate. It's not true, actually.
It depends on how you're looking at it. I can see how it could be looked at from the actions ones take in raising them, or I could see that getting touchy, as you shouldn't treat them like a possession. They're a person, they're a living being themselves. I understand that part. By law, right, they are absolutely your property. And that's where you get into the conversation, like that's why the word children came up, and child protective services, because that word came up for the governmental service. I'll just leave it like that, right? But what we have is sons or daughters. We don't really have children. And under law, your sons and daughters are your property, just on the legal side.
Yeah. Yes.
So
but
that is a
what do you
possession.
do when the parent is harmful to you? Then, so again, we go back to the titles. This is great. Mm-hmm. What makes you a parent? Not the title.
The
what
actions,
you
right?
Do, how you treat your child, what you give to your child, how do you fortify them? But more than anything, how you allow them to be their own selves, to be sovereign to themselves. Selfhood.
That's a great point, actually, because that really ties into my life purpose and the decision I had to make to be okay with, because it was the wrong environment. The woman will use the son or daughter and hold them hostage as her possession.
That's what I'm talking about. Here we go.
Try and take possession of the other parent. You know what I mean? I'm sure it's done in an opposite fashion in some cases. I'm not going to pretend that doesn't exist, but
big time.
Right. Yes. So now with that on the table, right, I think what we have to accept is, again, it goes back to the magnitude of what you're going to be able to produce in the world. And I'm not saying that's as a way for people to escape their responsibilities, but what I'm saying is this: how I'll put it. What you're saying is you want to protect their freedom and their ability to have choice in life that they want to live and stuff, right? So depending upon a person's possession of their view that they possess of the world, right, is going to determine what actions they need to take to make that an actual reality. Someone that maybe, a lot of people might call a conspiracy theorist or crazy or cuckoo or out the box, right? They may say, in order to protect them, I actually have to change the world itself, or else there won't be enough. This is the risk I see it as. If certain people like you and me and other people like us don't put in certain work, right, to make the world, to do the little changes that we're making in the world, to make the world a better place tomorrow, we run the risk of not being nothing to leave behind to them.
Everything you do today affects the next 7 generations and so on, like the American Indians talk about. How do you do that? So where does that start? Child rearing.
You're repairing people's minds.
How you bring children into this world is how you change the world. Nothing else outside of it. It starts in the family unit. It starts in the child's mind and spirit.
Let me ask you this.
And, allowing them to be who they are, allowing them to. You had a little bit different experience as a child. They saw your strength and it was so profound, your gift, that they, moved you in that direction. But a lot of people don't do that. They say, I want you to be a doctor, and that's what you're going to be, because the rest of the kids are this and that. So you're going to, you know what I mean? Instead of like letting the child be curious about what he wants to do, what he has a natural affinity for,
How do you have a natural affinity? Where does that come from?
It's like what you were talking about. When you see a child, he's tapping on stuff all day long. Well, give him some drumsticks. He's already drawn to beating on stuff. What he's drawn to naturally. Don't make it about you, and that he has to be a certain way to make you look good. Huh? And then the child is growing up having to do everything to meet the approval of the parents. That's slavery to me. I'm sorry, but
I could totally agree with that.
Yeah,
Possession.
it's possession. You're not letting him take an interest naturally. You know, if you see he's got a thing for math, go with it. If you see he's got a thing for painting, go with it. If you see he's a good communicator, get him into that, bolster that, not what you think it's supposed to be in any way, shape, or form, you know? And with this is how you change the world. And this is why we're doing the work we're doing, because we're having to go back and clean up the mess of broken people,
Yes.
of children that have not been allowed to be themselves within these constructs. They've had to fit in all these boxes by their parents, by school, work, you know, all these various things in society, to where people have to pretend. It's world of pretenders, so to speak.
Like you said, acts. The world is a stage. Acts and action.
Yeah.
So
Instead of, and a lot of that is, you said the you know, capitalism. Every man for himself, to what end?
yeah.
That commerce is more important than humanity.
I don't think that's the case.
Values. Sorry.
I think that we're in a transition.
Yeah.
And like when I brought up the, you know, amazing people, you know, segment a little while ago, and I mentioned a few names, like they did this, what if they stayed home with their family, that part. It's, you know, it's easy to say, hey, when we go to war, right? Which is confusion. War is just confusion. So when we go to war, it's easy to say, hey, those soldiers laid down their lives for our freedoms. Well, you know what? Steve Jobs laid down his life for the freedoms of the next two generations when they got a little whatever technology they tapping away on or talking to. It's going to be partly because Steve Jobs sacrificed that period in their family's life so that technology could be boosted and things could spin off of that with other companies and stuff like that. All of that growth is going to be responsible. So when you talk value, you know, that's where I get into that torn apart on the inside. Is your value to the few worth more than the value to the many? And you know, if you train your son or daughter, let's not leave them out nowadays, to be a wide receiver, right? And then the NFL says, hey, we know what, we're doing away with wide receivers. We're just gonna have running backs and linemen and quarterback. Now that's where I'm looking at it from the standpoint of, if we don't, like you said, when you said clean up the world, if we don't fix the world, well, let's not say like fix the world, like, because then everybody's gonna feel like they're broken, and that's not the point. If we don't heal the world, because we all need healing in some way, shape, or form.
Yes.
Then with the way the world is today, we already see where they're not going to have the freedoms we had. They're not going to be able to have thoughts, possibly. You know, they're going to be censored on their own minds. They're going to be told what they can and can't say with a social credit score. You know what I mean? They're going to be monitored constantly. They're going to be surveillance. They're going to be, all this stuff is at risk if we don't do something about it. So I looked at it and said, hey, you know what? If I sit here with you, I'm just going to feel stupid and regretful because I'm here with you, but I'm not. When I'm gone, I know what I'm leaving behind. I didn't do anything to make different. Now, on the other extreme, I got to say, hey, yeah, baby girl, I'm not there with you. You might even one day say you don't even know who I am. But this is the world I left behind for you. And I fought my ass off day and night to make sure that, you know, it was there. You know what I mean? For you.
Well,
so
for me, what I would like, what I dream of is, I don't want leaders and I don't want followers. I want side by side. We're going to come up with anything that's going to benefit the world. The world needs to be involved in the creating of it, not one man, not a handful that get to have to say, nope, sorry, down the box you go, sorry. No, I want the collective, because what is it? We're all interdependent.
right.
But if we're all interdependent, which is a fact, but somehow we have it set up to where we're dependent on a handful of people to meet our needs. That's just,
Mm,
yeah, that doesn't work for me. No, I want the collective. Everyone should know how to build a house. Everyone should know how to build the things that we need to survive. And then everything else is icing. But those, every child should be taught human anatomy, comprehensive human anatomy, so that they're not dependent on somebody else to tell them about their own body. It's just, I want a world of empowerment versus power
mhm.
in every way, shape, or form. Personal empowerment
I got you. I like
and
that.
grounding,
And then by
you
default,
know?
by default with that, we would be empowering them to, like, human anatomy wouldn't be, I guess that's where colleges and stuff wind up going in with degrees, so you can specialize, so you can streamline down to just the necessary information to consume to be effective in the direction that you choose to go on. Now, what I like when you said one person, right? I want to flip, I'm always the infinity person, right? I'm always the duality, the two sides of the coins. So at first glance, we could easily say, yeah, it's the few people controlling the many, right? But in reality, it's the many that's actually possess the need that the few people are exploiting. And see,
Yes.
once
Yeah.
everybody comes together on that level of consciousness, you'll see how they have no power over it. They've given them.
It's so, you know, um, they talk about, you just got to go back to work in the event of a pandemic, for what? To save the economy. Huh? And but saving humanity, shouldn't that be the first and foremost important thing? If the economy is more important, that's it's not going to go well. It's just not going to go well. Look at where we already are. If we keep doing the same thing, thinking we're going to get a different result, that's insanity, right?
Mhm.
Obviously, it's not working. And it's not rocket science. It's not that difficult. Cause and effect. If you look at what we've got going on, all the suffering, all the pettiness, jealousy, competitiveness, the dark side of the ego involved in so much of what we do, what is that going to get us? Just more of the same if we keep adhering to these behaviors and all of the constructs that help it stay in place. It's just, if
So
people aren't liking things now, then shouldn't we be looking at how we got here, what we have been doing that has gotten us to this point, our
yeah,
behaviors, our actions?
yeah.
We need to really have an in-depth conversation about that. We just look for the cures, but we don't talk about the cause of things. Oh, we got to fix this problem. Well, what's the question? We don't even know. We can't get the answer if we don't even know what the question is. What's the question? How did we get here? How did we get to this point? People say the world is really crazy. Well, how come?
We gave up ownership.
Yeah,
That's what this all
individuality.
brings down to.
Yeah, gave up individuality for the, oh,
Ownership of ourselves,
yes,
and our that would allow us to accept our ownership of our role in the collective.
yes. And that we are, what one person does affects the whole. Look at this pandemic is proving that fact. Someone on the other end of the world got a disease, and because we're all interchanging and trade and everything, travel, and it got to this side. Why were we traveling? This is why it's so maddening about this. I understand about the vaccine, I truly do. But until we address this truth, the vaccine is not going to save us, because what's the number one way that people have contracted the disease? Going to work, keeping the economy going, which means you have to interact with one another and risk getting a disease. If we don't have that conversation, when the next one comes along, we're not going to have another vaccine and more people are going to die. It's just, we're not addressing the real problem.
So
There's a lot to why things have gotten the way that they are, and we have to have those conversations, or we're just going to get more of the same.
I think you're absolutely right, and it ties into the old saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Even though we're going to
Teamwork
use son or
makes the
daughters.
dream work.
Yeah.
If that's not true, look at the divide. People say we need the unvaccinated to get this thing going.
So was Steve, let me ask you this question. Was Steve Jobs' error that he didn't invite enough of the village in to help raise his children?
I think his error was he was not really.
You see where I'm at with that now?
I think his error was he started a family. He just shouldn't even have started one, because he wasn't. His focus was his career, and you can't. If you're going to have both, then you have to be real about what that's going to take, time and energy wise.
So
you know what I mean?
Yeah, isn't that where
So
the
a lot
system?
of people that are businessmen like him, they don't have families for that reason. They know they can't provide for the family. They can't give them what they need because their job demands so much of them. There's nothing wrong with that, but don't bring a family into the equation then. It's not fair to them. They have needs. And if you can't meet them, why are you having them?
Okay, so let's look at it. Let's look at it like this. You already had the family, and you have an idea, and then you start a business when your kids are 9 years old, and you become Steve Jobs the following year. I mean, not to say you go instantly to billionaire status, but that impact and that growth and that catalyst happens, and now you're in a position where you're becoming Steve Jobs, and you already had the family. So it was out of the pursuit of being able to provide your family a better life and the people around you in the world a better, easier solution to whatever, that threw you now in a position of how do you deal with all this? And it's just one of those things that you can't win. And I think what I was looking at when I brought up the solution of does it take a village is, now do we own that problem ourselves, instead of blaming the individual and finding fault in them, do we now say, well, damn, how much did the village step up around them? Now, when you become a billionaire, from my vantage point, you get to afford to pay more of the village, order more of the village to pick up where you're unavailable. Because if it takes a village to raise the child, the son or daughter, it really just becomes of how much access does your children have. And I guess that's why the system came up with the title step parents, because now you can have someone else step in and provide that, fill that role. I'm just using the terms and looking at the success in the situation. Because if it takes a village to raise, we can't blame the individual for any lack when it comes to our sons or daughters, because it takes a village. We know this already. So we're in disorder, and everybody's out of order in this court.
The way I look at it is priorities. If you have a family, they come first. Period. End of story. If that's not the equation, do not have a family, because you will breed broken people. Children need their mother and father both, and they need to be involved in their children's lives at all times until they're old enough to go out on their own. You don't see a bear going, well, I'm just going to leave the cubs over here for a little while because I got to work on this beehive over here. No, man, they're there till they're able to fend for themselves. Children need that, and beyond. So if you're going to have a family, you really need to, that has to be first and foremost. The family has to come first if you're going to have a family. It's of the utmost importance.
So you definitely got to be aware.
Because everything else is ego related. Whether you're successful in this world of business. So, I mean, look at John Lennon. He died. Did he take any of his money with him? Did he take any of his accolades?
I don't
he didn't.
Really look at it as a successfulness in business. Look at it as a contribution to society itself and humanity. So let's take the money out of it, even on that side of it. Because we already know the economy is fucking up everything. We went over that, right? And that's the reason why you got the social, the families issues, and the economic situations and crime and everything. It's all based on the economy. So we already got that on the table. Now let's take the money out of the positive side. So we stripped the money from Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and John Lennon. And we say, look, it's not about the money anymore, but look at the impact. Because when we did that last video, we didn't say, hey, let's name some people that made the most money. we said, no, we're looking at the people that had a large impact on humanity, on the world, on society, and what kept them on the track and what could have derailed them. So that's what I see this as. So when you hear my position on it, and I'm not saying this conversation is not to convert you at all. I actually understand and appreciate.
Yeah,
and I'm saying it's more for people that's watching, because I know we're gonna have people that's like, I see it her way, and some people gonna be like, I see it his way, and then there's gonna be infinite amount of people in between. And so what's gonna happen is what I want to make clear is that, you know, we can't blame the individual for something the collective is responsible for. So either we're going to get rid of the economy, right? Or we're going to accept the economy and say, okay, well, because we accept the economy, all of this stuff exists. But if we take the money out of the successful side too, just like we would the negative side, and we remove the money, we're now talking about the contributions to society. So now when you go back and look at some of these people that may have made, you know, what we're looking at first glance, oh, they made a lot of money, they should have been there for their family, it wasn't, whatever, right? I understand that. At the same time, we take the money part away, we gotta say now, hey, well, what did they contribute to society? And that's where you get me saying, hey, was it worth the few or the many? What's your worth value at?
The best way to impact society is to be available for your children. Raise good children, raise healthy children. That's how you impact society. That's, to me, at the top. You want to ask that question: how do we breed a healthy society, and healthy and one that's built upon humanity first? Your family must come first. If you have money, success, impacting the world, you made a commitment, you brought a child into this world, and you got to honor that. That's what's most important. And then you have the next generation, because that child is going to grow up healthy, and he's going to get into a healthy relationship and breed healthy children. We have not been doing that. We have not been doing that. The family has come second. And that's the problem. To me, you want to change humanity, that's where you start, with family unit, with children, and how you bring them into the world, into a healthy environment, thus breeding more healthy people to create healthy environments. But we have the opposite, because the ego, the dark side of the ego, wants to be successful and impact humanity. But it's like, how about we have a world that doesn't even need anybody to do that to begin with? That's kind of where I look at it.
I was thinking about that. I was thinking about how we
why
would
do we
achieve that.
why do we need someone to impact the whole world? Because it's been messed up. We haven't been honoring humanity, how we treat one another.
I think I'm gonna have to use your favorite word. Is that we need a balance. And because of the duality and because of the law of balance, we gotta accept this is gonna exist. You know, this is gonna exist. If we go all the way back, I don't know. I have views that technology was very similar. Not to say we had the same, computers and all this stuff, but possibly so, because there was flying history of advanced technology when it wasn't supposed to be. Let's put it like that.
Ancient Aliens talks about it all the time in their show. You know, they see proof that there was all kinds of technology, and I've saved a meme about that. I wanted to send it to you, so I'm glad you brought that up. But yes, but bottom line, if humanity and how we treat one another isn't at the top as our most important priority, we are only going to self-destruct.
And I think if we focus too much on the humanity, then we won't advance technologically, where it gives the opportunity. See, the thing about an industrialized nation is it removes the quality of life at the same time that it provides a better quality of life, which is ironic. But so when there's a saying that, when you only had, when the economy is trash, everybody's more happy because the industry is really slowed down to nothing, And instead of there being, let's say, 100 different pair of jeans you could buy at the store, for example, you only got 2 pair. You want the black ones or the blue ones. They're Levi's. That's all you got. You know what I mean? So people are less wasting less time and energy worried if they make the right decision on stuff that don't even matter anyway. So the quality of life overall is better. And that's when you get into like you have better family bonding, because what does the human psyche do? They only really bond together when times are tough to survive. Just like any other atomic thing, as above, so below, when you heat something up or you give it more energy, right?
Yeah.
It expands in most cases. So that expansion is like social distancing. You know what I mean? That's why the family's like, you're 18, get the fuck out. When times is bad, they're like, no, son, we got this house. You, your sisters, your grandma, your auntie, your cousin, we all staying in this house forever. Nobody's leaving it. You know what I mean? That's you know what I'm saying? And everybody's banded together. So that's the law. That's the law of expansion and contraction. We can't argue certain laws. So when we see them manifest in reality, this is why we need to separate our emotions so that we can have true clarity.
Yes, emotional coloring. I have trouble with that one. No, I'm not going to say that. I'm working on it. I'm working on that particular balance, what you said, but all things aside, priorities is what's really important. What we're talking about, priorities, what's really at the top of importance, and you know, it does take a village. What's the truth that's on the table with this pandemic? We are interdependent, whether we want to own up to that truth or not. If we're not working together, it's not going to go well. We need one another. We are, in fact, sharing this planet. That's the truth. We're sharing it. So let's get real with that conversation. Quit acting like, I just hate when you go to look for a job, they tell you you're lucky to have a job. No, you're lucky to have workers, because if everybody at Walmart decided to quit, you'd be done. That's a fact. So who's the one with the power now? The people have the power.
They're working on that.
You wouldn't have an economy without the people. It takes the people to have an economy, to have markets.
That's why we got to get ahead of the robots, because they're coming. That's why they're working on the robots, so they can just say, oh, you want to quit? Okay, cool. All right, bring in the robots. So we got to be prepared as a people before that happens. This whole conversation reminds me of this TikTok video I saw where they quote, I want to see if I get it right. So bear with me. I may stumble. But it was a pretty amazing quote. And it said something like this. It said, my grandfather used to walk 10 miles to work every day. My father used to walk 5 miles. My son drives a Mercedes, and my grandson will be in a Ferrari. And my great-grandson will be back walking again. And they said the voiceover said, why? You know what I mean? Why is that? And he said, because strong men create easy times. Easy times create weak men. Weak men create bad times. Bad times create strong men.
I kind of look at it like, if you're coming from ego, on the dark side of the ego, it's not going to go well. When it's more about being right than doing the right thing, it's not going to go well. Whatever it is. I feel this planet has been run through the narcissism, the dark side of the ego, proving yourself to other people, wanting to look a certain way to other people, which is fake. It's not real. And it's just created this whole lie that we're not dependent on each other. We need one another. We need one another. And until we come together, we're just going to be destructive. And usually because there's somebody that wants to have the power to control everyone or control another person. And
everything's a cycle.
it's going to perpetuate more of the same destruction. That's like I've said before, you know, the visionaries knew that we were going to have wars and everything. Why? Because they were happening. They already saw the destructiveness of their leaders. Destructiveness is only going to get you more destruction. And that's what we got. We're very destructive in our behaviors, harmful to one another and ourselves. And if we don't get that right, it don't matter. You can get all the vaccines all you want. We'll be done. And I'm not cynical. I just look at what is. What are we protect? What cause and effect? If you're destructive, you're going to breed more destruction. It's not. You got to stop what you're doing so you can get something different.
Right.
You know, and it's interesting, you know, that and this is interesting. When you get older, you need less. You find that you don't want the Ferrari and the fancy house, and you just want simplicity. Less is more. But we're taught just accumulate more. You know, Steve Jobs, get more powerful, more. And he got possessed. Talk about
Curiosity.
possession. He got possessed by it. He got possessed by
his curiosity.
You know, yes, and it does kill the cat sometimes when it's out of balance, or wisdom isn't at play.
So we got to go back to your quote earlier when you said, if everybody in the world was the same, it would be a very bland world. So
well,
those differences, yeah, I got you, but we're also
in the same
differences,
element, right?
Yeah. As a certain notes, yes. And then on different notes, we have our own individual curiosities. And see, that's always going to be different. So just like that song, though, I agree with you from what we're seeing, right? And it's like that song, headed for self-destruction. We're headed for self-destruction. And I brought up cycles earlier because everything's secular. And what we know is
patternistic.
The ancients say, hey, we go through phases as humanity. We have the golden ages, and then we fall out of grace, and we always lose our way, and we wind up in the dark ages, all that destruction and self-infliction, and then eventually you become enough of the thing about change, or what they call it, a reaction, right, is you don't need every one to convert at the same time. All you need is a critical mass. So what happens is when you're in the golden age, you're up here, and then there's a couple, there's always that one bad apple. Now you got 2, now you got 14, now you got 37, now you got 500, and then you start to fall from the golden age and get down into darkness because the concentration of negativity and dark is becoming more popular, thus decreasing or causing the cycle down to trend towards the dark ages. Then we fall into the dark ages. We done destroyed everything. We done poisoned everything. We done done all this. Now the reverse thing happens, the yin and the yang, the balance that you love. So, or that you're in love with so much, right? The minority is the golden mindset, right? So the golden mindset starts to be 1, then 2, then 4, then 16, and 97, and 500, and it starts to pull us back up to now we're back golden again. So the question is, will humanity ever remain stagnant, or will it constantly be in some sort of spirally motion?
I don't know.
DNA spirals, will we ever not?
I know. Yeah, right. I like that. That's interesting. Yeah. For the last 4,000 or 5,000 years, we've been very destructive, maybe even further back. Anytime you have slavery or oppression, you don't have a healthy planet. And we have slavery and oppression, such disturbing levels. And now they're talking about making robots. So I don't know about all I know is the toxic cycle and the family curse is abuse.
Well, you know what's coming with the
another
robots.
person can own another person in any way, shape, or form is the problem.
So
it's not true. You can't own another person.
Guess where you're at now? Now, guess where you're at now with it? robot rights.
Oh my gosh, yeah,
No,
right.
this is
Yeah,
really a
I
thing.
believe you. I
I
believe
seen
you.
her. There's
It's
this guy.
crazy.
And he was like the first, if not the first, one of the first guys that have like a little chip in attached to their brain, and he's got this little stem that comes up, and he looks like the Snorks. Remember that cartoon, the Snorks? Was
Oh
it the
my
Snorks or
gosh.
whatever? The Snork, you know what I'm talking about? They had the
Yeah.
little, they had that little. That's what he looks
And
like.
in the
No
back.
lie. If you
Oh
looked it
my
up,
God.
the little thing come over the head, it bends down like
Yeah.
that. That's exactly what it looks like. I mean, it's not as big as theirs, but that's what it reminded me of. But anyway, he's got it to the point where, because of his existence, right? Because the world is now in possession of, right? Its first actual cyborg, technically. Now there's this whole movement for cyborg rights, which there you go. You're actually bringing in a person, creating a person, and now you got to give it rights. Gary, be really different
And
time.
that whole thing right there, as long as we're at the table and what we're discussing is whether we allowed to have the rights we were already born with, that God gave us, yeah, it's not going to go well. It's not going. Nobody likes to be told what to do. I don't know anyone that likes to be told what to do. And God gave us freedom. We're born with it. We don't have to fight for rights we already have. And as long as that's happening, that tells you what's going on. You're being
Unless you
oppressed,
sign a
you're being
contract, right?
controlled. You're being oppressed or being controlled by an outside force. And as long as that's going on, what has that gotten us? That's been going on for the last 4,000 years that we know of, where there's at least one group of people that are being enslaved and bullied and picked on and controlled. And as long as that is going on, you could be Steve Jobs and be successful, but what kind of mark are you really making that really even matters? Not the one that matters to me. Apple's great, but what good is it when we have a toxic society full of alcoholic drug addicts and people suffering from acute post-traumatic stress disorder and all these other disorders? And that's like, yeah, I mean, it's just, if we're having a fight for rights, right there, that just says, we're being controlled. We are being controlled and oppressed. That you have to fight for something that already is. And it's what Martin Luther King was trying to do. People think it was just Black people. No, he was talking about civil rights for everyone that we all just already have, that God gave us. When that's what he meant by an edifice that produces beggars.
Yeah. So I like the Martin Luther King. His name was actually Michael. They actually, it's one of the things where his father just woke up one day and said, "We're gonna call you Martin." And he went to church and told the church everybody's gonna call him Martin from now on. But his name was actually Michael. So they never changed it officially. It was just one of the things that everybody just called him Martin. So the thing about that is, you got to go back to this entity presence and possession, okay? Because there's an entity that would greatly benefit from having rights that it wouldn't otherwise have because of the nature of the business, right? Which is known to be in law, it would have a title assigned to it to describe it, to categorize it. And that would share a title that was very, very made very familiar during those actions. So a lot of people don't do the research far enough to know that when we went back to state your claim, right? Stating certain claims without knowing the contract associated with such a claim creates an emotional attachment to a belief that may get you involved in a contract that you don't want to be married to.
Yeah.
Right? But the benefit of having that successfully blow over everybody's head is that the entity becomes closer to being living because of the acceptance of a contract that people didn't research. You know? And that's the danger of that. So, and we only have all of ourselves to fault because we didn't do the research.
And where does that start? That starts in the family unit. starts how you raise your children.
I got you with that.
It starts with people. And when we're bringing them into the world, what we do with that, what we're doing with that, what are we perpetuating? It ain't good. And how do we know that? Look around. It ain't looking so good. How could that be? Couldn't be anything we've been doing
or not
or
doing,
not
right?
doing.
Yeah.
Right. So again, action is the law of cause and effect. We are not working from that principle in this world. We're in the blame game and deflect, and everybody else is fault, and which allows shenanigans to happen, which allows people to try to control you.
Yeah, you just stumbled into something that's really, I think, really at the core of it all is yeah, I like these journeys with you. I like the paths we wind up.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for all of this. I think what we have here is a focus on the present, right? We always talk about being a present. It's the only thing that exists. So when you say that, which is technically, but we know all time exists all time, right? All time affects all time all of the time. Now, here's the thing about that, though. If we're going to speak into possessions and invoking and evoking and taking ownership, we have to first agree on where we want to be, right? That means we're going to agree on the destination, which you heard me bring up from Simon Sinek before on Wide and Seven. So, and your podcast.
The plan. You were talking about the plan.
Yeah. So see, once we all agree on the plan, so let's say we go back 100 years and the plan was to make today. Okay, let's do this. Let me see what this does for you. Because I appreciate you sharing everything. And I know that was a nice bit of emotion attached to it. And it's healthy. It's healthy because you're gonna get people to think about the issues on the table, and you're stating your claim, right? So let's say now with all that on the table, let's go back. We hop in the time travel machine. We go back to 100 years ago, whenever it was, before all this, and we go and we're part of the meeting in that secret room in some Bilderberger, hotel suite, right? And we're saying, okay, here's the plan of where we want to get humanity to on the globe or the earth or the world by 2021. We're going to need this, that, and the other, boom, 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 right? And not that they assigned, so to speak, Steve Jobs to be the one to do it, right? Or maybe they did. You know what I'm saying? They took his little baby DNA sample when he was born, they ran it through their little machine and said, hey, you know what? He would make the perfect Steve Jobs. And then you wonder why people get to walk through life a certain way they do, and it seems to be so easy for them, or so whatever condition, right? But let's not go too hypothetical, too fairy tale. Let's just say he does it naturally by himself and he becomes Steve Jobs out of the random, shake of the dice and the roll of the dice, and he becomes Steve Jobs. If we sat down together 100 years ago and said, this is the plan, do you now, condemn him as much, knowing that his actions, even if the cause and effect on his family, were part of the plan that we signed off on 100 years ago, being, let's say, in that room and that signed that contract for the world without the world knowing?
Gosh, I mean, first of all, I certainly don't want to sound like I'm condemning him. I want to clarify that.
Okay, yeah, I was being a little exaggerated.
Yeah, I want to be clear about that. I'm just talking about what you do and what the cause and effect of what you do. That if you don't, you know what I mean? And the rippling effect of that through generation to generation. What we do today is going to affect the world many generations to come, and that reality and that truth. So that's all I meant by that. But anyways, so are you talking about, like, are you trying to say that, because what I brought up was the plan thing that you talked about, like a plan.
Okay.
So a plan of action so that you can have an outcome, the desired outcome that you want.
Exactly. And let's say in the future, we brought up the idea that the future talks to the past too. So now the future wrote a contract that said, hey, look, guys, train, and we're all aboard here. We got to be at the stop 2021. It's got to be. So now the universe goes, okay, aye, and it goes in here and does all this work and makes things the way they are for 2021's arrival, right? So it has to be. So what I'm getting at is, if we look at it from the point of that where we're at right now, we talked about the cycle of going golden age to darkness, that like a watch that apparently has to keep going around, or else humanity freezes and remains stagnant. And I don't know if we were on roll the dice and remain stagnant one random day at any one given point. You know what I mean? Like musical chairs and shit. You know what I'm saying? So, it might stop today and be like, okay, this is what you got forever. Welcome. You know what I mean? And,
but the plan part, the reason I brought that up, because that's the key to everything. The future is not something that just happens, something to create. You create cause and effect. That's the law. It is the law. It's one of the laws of the universe, cause and effect. And we're not having that conversation. We haven't for 4,000, 5,000 years. Just give it to God. They'll get their karma, blame, blame, blame.
Yeah.
And because we have a blame game, nobody gets held accountable and nothing ever changes. So
yes,
we're not addressing what we're doing and the result of that, doing or not doing, we're not really having the real conversation. And until we really have that one across the board, we can expect the same.
Right. We have to take ownership of what we possess, which is everything that we see around us, that we think is ours, that we think is someone else's. It's all our collective possession.
Yes, it's the collective. And when people say, look at our leaders, well, they're a reflection of us, and vice versa. There is no us in them. Human behavior that we all adhere to, every single one of us are guilty of every single human trait there is. That's the truth. Until we address that truth and we do something different, we're going to continue to perpetuate what's happening. It's just, that's the way it works. That's the way the universe works.
So
gives you an outcome. And if we don't do something different, we're going to be stuck in this toxic, abusive cycle.
And is that where you get into, we've said it a few different ways in our interactions. Is that, I'll say it this way today, is that where we get into not so much being, we have to look beyond our own possessions and start to see what we're actually a possession of. Us all. Whether you want to say that's the earth, or some greater flat earth, or the some creation, some creator, whatever that is, right? You got to understand that there's some sort of thing that we all are a part of. We are possession of. And that puts us all on the same level of respect due, rights due, quality of life due, pursuit of liberty, everything.
Free will.
Yes.
God gave us free will.
Yes.
And what we do with that is our own. That's not God's. Can't blame God.
No.
We cannot. And we need to re-examine.
So when we sign a contract that ends in killing a part of us, whatever part that is, we have to understand that we gave them that handle to slaughter that part of us because we agreed to that contract.
Yes.
So the thing about that is that no matter what contract you sign, there's going to be pros and cons. Always. So I can't think of a situation that would truly be a win-win-win-win-win. You know what I mean? Like you said, you get the large monetary contract, you lose on the family, most likely in some way, shape, or form. You have the proper family, you're going to probably not make the huge potential of wealth that you could generate for the family to leave behind for future generations, with instructions, maybe even like some of the ultra wealthy people we do. They sacrifice their life, but then they know that they're going to have the lawyers that's going to disperse the money, and now nobody that comes after them should technically have to work anymore and be free to create.
I would like to do the next podcast on the reality and the truth of interdependence. Then we can address what you're talking about. The truth of interdependence.
I like
we need
that.
each other. We
Yes.
truly need each other. And that's how you develop a win-win. You own up to we're sharing this planet. What one person does affects another person. Could you imagine if we worked with that truth and that principle, what we could do? Imagine, as John Lennon said, imagine all the people sharing all the world. Because we are, in fact, sharing the world. Why don't we get real with that truth? When we get real with that truth, we will have a win-win. I truly believe that from the depth of my soul.
I like that. So the village to raise a child thing.
And think about it. It does take a village. Every aspect of society has to support the well-being of a child. And if it's not, what's that about?
Yeah. It's like you said, when you got your close-knit neighborhood and the young mother or young couple say, hey, neighbor, damn, I'm gonna be late for work, I'm not gonna make it to work. And they say, why? Oh, because I don't have a babysitter called off. It's that one neighbor that maybe the neighborhood trust or whatever that says, hey, I'll watch them, go ahead to work, don't lose your job, don't lose that situation, don't miss that opportunity, go ahead to that tryouts for your American Idol, go ahead to whatever it is you're trying to go live your dream, I'll step in. You see what I'm saying? And so
And
I think what I'm
that?
saying here, let me drop this and I'll give it to you. I think what I'm saying is the same way we accept that person being able to step in that situation on a micro scale when it's just our neighbor in our small neighborhood. I think we need to give credit on the macro scale when we see people like the Steve Jobs and stuff sacrificing their family, their relationship maybe with their family, in a sense maybe where somebody else would see they could have had improvements to go off and do the same thing for the greater benefit. Now, so I think
the thing
that
is, what one person does affects the whole.
yes.
And we're not living out of that truth. We're waiting for Steve Jobs to do it all for us. Wrong.
Well, I think it's the Steve Jobs that don't wait.
No one should have that much power to impact everyone. We should all have that power collectively. We should be doing this collectively. Then we won't need Steve Jobs. I want a world where we don't need Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and philanthropy. I don't want that.
I see where you're at. I see where you're at now.
Equity.
I've been hearing you say it. But I haven't. Now I see what you're saying, and I think, okay. So here's me being me, right? Going to the infinity, going to the balance, going to duality. You're absolutely. I see what you're saying, and let me say it like this. I think, remember that conversation that we had about proud and humble, right? So we wind up as a people as a success of the humble campaign, wanting to be not proud. We always end up demonizing our noble, excellent, and splendid, which is proud. That's what proud means. So I think what the solution is instead of, let's say, saying we don't need them, and I know you're not saying like just get rid of them in the world, but I mean, instead of people feeling like we don't need them, right? I think what we need to do is then now instead encourage the people to know they possess curiosities too. And the reason their curiosities is there is so that they can become the Steve Jobs and the Bill Gates or whatever it is they were supposed to be the best in. They were destined to be the Steve Jobs in something, but they didn't do it. And that's why the graveyard becomes the richest places. So then they have grief. And once you're in the emotion of grief, you start to find blame. You place blame on others for whatever various reasons. But the solution is going to be, despite who, what, when, where, or why, that they went off and did whatever, there's something in you, each one of us, that we're supposed to be doing too, to that same exact level of greatness that we may be overlooking within ourselves. Why? Because we're not in possession of ourselves. We didn't grip our own handle. We didn't own up to it. We didn't state our claim. We signed another contract and we're wondering why
it's only
we don't like our marriage.
Yes, thank you. Yes, that's it.
And then that's what's going to bring us
if we had a whole world that did what they really wanted to do with their life, pursue their dreams, not some dead-end job. It's misery. That's not a real life. That's not a good model. We need
Right.
a new model. We need a model where people are allowed to pursue their dreams and be who they really are.
And that directly connects us to the village raises the child that you want to touch on next. So this is great.
Yes. I love to come back to that principle, really
Yeah.
dig in on that one, because there's always a lot of variables to this stuff, and I love it. So
Yeah.
thank you
Because
so much.
because once everybody realizes there's a Steve Jobs in them too, now we can stop and we can just accept, hey man, go be your Steve Jobs. I'm gonna be mine. I need this. Boom, boom. Now everything's flowing because everybody's happy, or let's say enjoying themselves, rather. I
And
like the
then
word enjoy.
could that be a win-win? I think
Now we're
so.
getting to it. And then
I
that's
think
where
so.
we're getting to the economy being different, because you're gonna have to deal with actual free enterprise, not free will enterprise, but free enterprise where it costs you nothing and you can just, you're free to create, because everything in the world was free to begin with. Now you can actually be who you want. A lot of what stops people from being who they want is restrictions of, like you're talking about, poverty, or the level of poverty, the resources they have, etc.
The class system.
Right. And people
It's
say there's
not
not one
real.
here, but it
It's
absolutely
not
is one
real.
here.
Yes, there is. Yes.
Yeah,
And it's not real. It's God did not design it that way. So
exactly.
that's a man-made construct. Once we really get real about, nobody can tell another person what they're worthy of, what their station is in life, and what they're deserving of. Nobody has that right to tell another person that. That's what's on the table here.
Right.
You want to change the world and have a win-win, empower people.
Yes. And then
Give them
that's the battle.
their selves back to them. Then you're going to have a world of happy people. What a concept. Content people who don't need material things to be happy, because they're whole already. Those things are icing. The cake is already intact.
Yeah.
They know they're the cake. They're not looking for it out. They're not looking. It's
And,
here already. So
and look at what you said. Look at exactly what you said. That's exactly what Steve Jobs' mission statement was. To empower the people, basically. I'm gonna just paraphrase it, but to empower the people. He wanted them to be able to do on one machine what they needed a whole bunch of for. The typewriter, this, the other, save time. You could just backspace instead of white out with the ribbon on the white ribbon eraser, like the, you know what I mean, on the old typewriters when I had black and the white ribbons. So you had to
phone
go
now,
back. Yeah,
call it a gadget.
yeah. So that's
It's like a
exactly.
telephone, a tape recorder, a camera. I saw the thing that it's all these things in one in the palm of your hand.
Oh yeah, the iPhone. But go back to the original Macs that he built originally, like the first ones. It was really to just empower people and save paper, make the planet better, all these things, right? So that's what happens once you sign that contract. You know what I mean? And supply the action. But like I said, there's a Steve Jobs in all of us. A lot of
Yes.
people give Apple the credit because they don't know Xerox. Xerox created the first real computer system because they were using it for their printers. You see what I'm
And there's
saying?
that, and you go back, but yeah. So what we're talking about here is really great. It's about empowering people, empowering yourself.
Yes.
That's how we're going to win.
Yes.
That's how everyone is going to win.
Yep.
Not just these people over here and the lead over here. Yeah.
And that's
And
why.
then it does come down to that truth that nobody can tell you what your value is. No one has the right to tell you what your station is in life. Nobody has that right to tell you that.
And
And if
that's
they
why.
are, they're abusing you. That's it. It's that simple. Once that truth, because that's the truth that's on the table. Once you know what you're worth, you'll be worth more. Why? Because you know it. You finally know it. You'll be worth what you say you're worth. Nobody else could tell you that in any way, shape, or form. And that's the truth that's on the table. That's what we're being. It's a very pivotal time right now. It's very pivotal, because that really is it. You go to work and they say you're lucky to have a job. Says who? Like Mick Jagger. Why? So I could look like you? Why? So I could think like you? and not have a selfhood because you get to tell me who and what I am and where I belong? Yeah, no, I don't think so.
So we have to take back our invoking and evoking, right?
Yeah.
Become who we were supposed to be, and sign our own contracts with ourselves.
Yeah.
And then the village, will be able to be in position to handle the sons and daughters again.
Yes.
So
not even handle, be side by side. No leaders, no followers, side by side. Self-empowerment for everyone. What a concept. Wouldn't that be something? To
starts
empower
with
our children, wow, what a concept. Empower them to be Steve Jobs. Everyone gets to be. It's not a select few.
right. And that's why we got to accept that, because the moment we tear them down for being who they are, we lose our own freedom to become who we should be. So, and it's hard. It's hard because one of my favorite quotes is the hardest part of having any wisdom is constantly remaining disciplined to the knowledge. So then that's where the logics and the analytics come into play against the emotion, because you'll have a lot of conversations with emotion, but the reality is, the logic, the truth is right. So it's like you say, you always say balance. So to help us breathe, we got to always accept that there is a balance. So that's where the same thing comes to play. If Steve Jobs can do it, I can do it. Trish can do it. You can do it. You see what I'm saying? However, there's a cost of ownership to everything. And some paths, some journeys are more comfortable than others. So, we're gonna get this village together.
Yeah.
I appreciate you, Trish. You got anything else you want to drop on us?
I just that that principle for me is at the core of everything. If you bring it down to the nucleus of what is happening, that's the truth that's on the table, regardless of all these other variables. The main truth is nobody has a right to tell anybody what your station is in life. Nobody has the right to tell you what you're worth or what you're deserving of. Period. That's the truth that's on the table across the world.
Yeah.
Is the idea that somebody out there gets to tell you who and what you are and where you belong. Nope. Or a group of people, or nope, nobody gets that. That's the truth. That's the truth that's on the table. Nobody else gets. We get to say what our value is. We get to say what our boundaries are. We get to say what what treatment we're willing to accept. Nobody else is going to say, well, we get to tell you. No, you don't. That's a fact. And to me, that's at the core of everything. Everything in this world is based upon that principle and that truth, that somebody else can tell you who and what you are. Yep. And where you're supposed to be and to belong. Belong to yourself.
Right. I think that's accurate.
You possess yourself, you belong to yourself, period. Nobody gets to say otherwise. That's where I stand. I'm not going to change, because by golly, it took me, I'm 56 years old, to realize the stupid girl I've been running my whole life, that somebody else put that on me and robbed me of my entire selfhood, believing that you get to tell me what I'm worthy of. Right. Nope. That's the truth that's on the table for me. When you talk about possession in any way, shape, or form, that's where it comes from, that idea. And that has been allowed in our society.
I think it's law. I think it's more than just allowed. I think it's law. I think that's why we're seeing everything that we're
seeing. Well, there's human law and there's higher law. Higher law.
Yeah. Hold on.
Nothing of this stuff.
I think I just did a post that said, it starts with, I am worth it. Right. So what we got to do is know if we're gonna make that pledge and state that claim here for all the people that we're helping here, we have to also accept Steve Jobs made the same pledge. And when he went to create Apple and he had to step away from his family, despite how we feel about it as a whole, he made the pledge that said, you know what? I am worth it. Going and creating this Apple, this entity. And he was worth it. And he paid the cost with his family and the people that has consideration of it. But I'm not just focusing on him. I'm saying that for everybody to know that there's a Steve Jobs in you too. And there's going to be pros and cons to whatever you feel like you're worth. But just know that you're worth it completely, wholly.
Yes.
And go get it
Yeah.
and go be successful.
That is, to me, that's really, that just, everything points to that truth. Everything points to that truth. You know, what you're worth. 8 hours, what 8 hours to your day? What is that worth to you? You're giving up you're exchanging 8 hours of your life to help this company succeed for them. And then you're supposed to act like you're thankful for it, like Charles Bukowski said.
Well,
yet I don't count. I'm only worth $14 an hour minimum wage when I'm the one that's been working like a dog. In the event of a pandemic, on top of everything else, and you put $14 on the table, that's an insult. That's 8 hours of my day, 8 to 10 hours of my day. No, nobody gets to, you don't get to put a standard amount that everybody's worth.
Right.
That's a lie.
I was gonna say, I was gonna ask, would it change it for you if it was $35 an hour?
What would change it for me is you don't get to say. I get to tell you what I'm worth. Not, you need us to have a company to begin with. Let's have that conversation. But you're coming at me and telling me I'm lucky to have a job. If all of your employees quit right now, where would you be?
Right. If everybody stopped paying rent.
Secondary. See, here's the truth. You know, when you're entering a relationship, employee-employer, it should be symbiotic. Both parties' needs should get met. A person's pay should be a reflection of your profit margin. You would not have profit without your employees to help facilitate and meet your needs. So I'm going to meet all your needs and you're going to give me crumbs. Yeah, I'll start my own business. Thank you very much.
That's what I was getting at. That's what I was getting at. Because
give away your power.
Yes. That's why I was like, I was asking you if it would be better if it was if it would be a difference if it was $35 an hour, because I wanted to bring up the point that at some point you're going to realize nobody else can make you happy outside of you. And if you have a job where you're making $80,000 a year, trust me, you could be like, you know what? Fuck this job. I would rather go just do the trials and errors of being myself and seeing what happens. Not that, you know, it's not even to say that you're not being yourself. But what if you want to do music? So what if you're at this job and you got to do 12 hours of this job and it's just killing you, right? Like you said, you used the word earlier, it's killing you. It's killing your time, killing your family time. Yeah, because now you don't have the family time. Because you don't have the family time, you don't have your time. You feel like then because you don't have any of that time, now when you gotta go run errands, that sucks because that's time that you really wish. See the domino effect. So now your music is killed or greatly affected.
Dreams are killed.
Which could be a gift, it could be a curse. Maybe all that pressure on you makes you, create a diamond of a song and you go triple platinum and now you're exactly where you wanted to be, but it wasn't the way you thought you were going to get there, or it dies forever because you never get to live up to your full potential.
Because you're too busy trying to make a living.
Right.
That doesn't really provide you with a living. So,
right.
And what's the American dream? The American dream, and this is the difference between regular people and Steve Jobs. He went after the American dream. What's the American dream? You want a little piece of the pie, not go work for somebody else, start your own company, have your own. That's what initially that idea was built upon. Go out and get your own. And I hear people say, oh, they're not going to do the pipeline and all these people aren't going to have jobs. Like, no, that's not true. Go out and start your own company. Don't wait for these guys. It puts you in a place of dependence. So
stop waiting to be possessed.
But
Bye.
even then, if you do have a company, what's going to happen, and I pray for this daily, is people will understand their true value and they will come to the table and say, what's in it for me? If I'm going to work for you, what do I get out of it? What do you mean? I'm talking about monetary compensation. Am I equal or am I an underling? If I'm an underling, I'm not interested. I'll start my own company. Thank you very much. If you do not treat me like an equal and honor what I actually bring to the table, which is to help facilitate and keep your company running for you to make money. If I'm not an equal player in that, yeah, why do I need you?
And that's the choice that people have to come to when they wake up and they realize they don't have ownership of themselves, regardless of the contract. Like we talked about with the artists, they possess you. When you go to a job and you sign up for 9 to 5, guess what that means? You,
They
whatever
got you.
time it is, you got to be in bed by a certain time the day before, or else you're gonna have a really crappy day. At some point, it's different for everybody. Yes, some people get 2 hours of sleep, they can function. Some people need 8. But that means if you got to be to work at 9 o'clock, you better be to sleep, or else you're signing up for some shit the next day. You know what I mean? You already
And
know it.
it's the same idea with relationships. Again, these
Yes.
slogans that you hear, she wears the pants, or he wears the pants. Well, you can bet if there's only one person that wears the pants, the other one does not have a voice.
Right.
If there's if the relationship, be it family, be it your community, you're in a community center or whatever, it involves two people. If it's not symbiotic, it's abuse. If both parties' needs aren't getting met, someone's being taken advantage of, being used for the benefit of the other person.
So I
These
didn't see
slogans,
self-abuse in it.
well, there you go. If you accept being in a relationship where one person wears the pants, that's the epitome of self-abuse. Accepting that treatment is
Mm-hmm.
self-abuse. Accepting someone to treat you poorly is self-abuse. You're allowing it. So you're involved in that. You're, like you said, you're adhering to the contract. I allow you to wear the pants. And what
Mm-hmm.
do you got? You don't have a voice. But I have some family members. But if it's relationships, true and healthy relationships come from a place of honoring, respecting, and equal. Each person is equal on the table. They're both
Yeah.
valued the same way and treated with that same truth.
Yeah. Yeah. We gotta, see why people um eat in each individual case accept what they accept. I think I think that's personal, but it's definitely at the root of why they remain, whether it's a abusive relationship or a job that you didn't realize by definition is a toxic workplace, and you just thought that's what life was supposed to be like working for somebody else. So
Because we live in a world that believes that's okay. We live in a world that believes that another person can tell you what you're worth and what your station is in life. And that comes from insecurities. It comes from things you're told when you're really little that rob you of yourself. So you go into the world looking outside of yourself for what you already have. You don't need it. You already got it. That's what that song Mama May Have, Papa May Have, but God bless the child that's got his own. That's what that song is talking about. The child already has his own. He's his own person. He knows who he is. He knows his value. He knows his worth. That's why I say the family unit is so important. It's your child's first experience with everything. We look to our parents for guidance. That's what they're there for. Trent Sheldon was talking about this the other day. He was watching his son. He does everything that I'm doing. And if that's the case, which it is, that's how children are learning. That's their first point of learning is from example, from their parents. And if a child is taught that they have to do everything to make the parent happy, they disappear.
hmm.
And it just perpetuates what we have. This idea that, like I think you even said, your mom said horrible things to you, something like, you'll what was it? You're worthless or something to that effect.
Yeah, all that
I
good
mean,
shit.
you put that into a child, what do you think you're going to get? He's going to act on that belief. That's the contract. He takes that in and carries that with him for the rest of his life. Most
Yeah.
cases, or they drink. If people get into, they feel low self-esteem. They don't feel worthy because your mother or your father tells you you're not worthy, and thus you partake to self-harming behaviors.
So what we
You know,
can't do, what we need to alter in that, right? Everything you said is true. And you know me, I'm the one that says, and it's more to it. It's always more to it. So we got that, we got the negative parts. And that's not to say you covered everything that could happen, right? But there's positive things to it too. Because of that, it things grew in me, like we talked about, that anger, right? That anger helped push me to want to make, certain things happen to people in life that make them angry. When you
I just
look
want
back
a
on your
world where you
when you
don't
look
have to
back
go
when you
through
look
that,
when you
though.
look back on your childhood, there was things that made you angry at the time. There was things that made you angry later on when you look back on it. And those things you converted into fuel to boost your rocket ship and take off and blast off into the person you're supposed to be. So that's why for me, I mean, in comparison to some people, you could say my upbringing, my youth was bad, but in comparison to others, you could say I had a great one. It's just the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. However, what I want people to understand, to walk away today, is knowing that it's different for everybody. So what
Yes.
one set of circumstances for one person would destroy them, that same set of circumstances for another person helps mold this genius and develop this talent that otherwise wouldn't exist if it wasn't cooked in that exact pot, with that exact temperature, under those exact conditions, with those exact seasonings and some spice. You see what I'm saying?
And I would like, so I know we keep saying this, but I definitely want to do, I think this is perfect. And
We need
when you
seasoning.
say every day is a perfect day, and I want
Mhm.
to talk about that principle and that truth, I would love to do a podcast on that, because I think that's really what you're getting at. There are
Yeah,
no accidents. And that's really important to talk about, and why that is. And it comes back to the cause and effect, the law of cause and effect. There are no accidents, because what you do is going to get you this result, and that result's going to keep happening. Try to teach you what you need to learn, so it's going to keep happening until you learn it.
yeah. Like, where would we all be if we still were on the typewriter right now?
Yeah, you know what I mean. So
Be
that's
no
it's,
Facebook, no nothing, no
yes,
YouTube.
yes. And but anyway, I would love to do that. And thank you so much for just having these talks with me, because it's can be very frustrating when you try to communicate with people and they really don't understand where you're coming from.
Yeah,
I It's nice to have somebody that's willing to dig in and understands the purpose of all of it, you
yeah.
know.
I
And
I'm
so,
really grateful as well, because this was really a challenge for you, and I appreciate you fighting through it, because there was a lot of emotion tied up with you with this. More so, this is probably the most emotional video we've done. And I want to let you know that I recognize that. And I understand it's going to be emotional for some of the people watching too, as well. And, one of the battles that I fight on a daily occurrence is because I don't have that emotional side. You know what I mean? So, however, for me, what I think, and that's, some people say that's a gift and a curse of my upbringing, but I see it as a gift. I know I don't connect well with people because a lot of people are emotional, like on as a whole, and they want to connect emotionally. And I'm like, well, no, the equation is this. And they're like, what is that? But that's what it is. So what we can, that all that summary, always the perfect day, we can summarize with one word: acceptance. And that's why I keep throwing your favorite word back at you, because I need to remind you: balance,
yeah,
duality. We can't
yes,
have one without the other.
yes,
So as soon as we demonize
yes,
one, we jeopardize the opposite.
yeah,
The
yes,
only way to have balance, unfortunately, and that's really on some planes of thought. Um, this is a realm, so to speak, of duality. So how can we ever? That's why I was like, how can we ever come to a point where humanity remains stagnant by the definition of what we're actually possessed within? There you go. Let's change it. We're possessed within this earth, this world, this globe, whatever you want to call it for whoever, flat earth, round globe people, whoever, right? And it has certain laws.
Yeah.
You see?
Yes.
And acceptance is a byproduct of it's always the perfect law is like this is, you know what I'm saying?
Yes. Yes. And I do have to go to the loo.
Okay. Yeah, we've been going for a good bit this time. But possession was really important. So
yes,
shout everybody out.
I got so much out of this, and I know exactly what you're talking about with the emotionality balance. You know, I get that. I truly hear you. And it's interesting because I'm very mindful of what you're talking about. I'm very aware of it, and I am currently very focused on that particular. So
Hey,
thank
look,
you for that.
one thing before we part, I'll be brief. I want you to know your brother helped people that would have never been reached if he wasn't in the position that he was in. For better or for worse. He's touched people who are going to be able to touch people, who's going to be able to reach people. And there's a whole domino effect that's helping the butterfly effect in humanity. Okay.
Love that. Thank you for that.
All
That's
right.
beautiful.
You enjoy.
You.
Go take care of
You
yourself.
too. Yes. And we'll do this again. I'm very excited. So,
Always.
all right. All right, Pasha.
See you, Trish.
See you later.
Possession. 9 tenths of the law.
Yes.
Enjoy.
Okay.